please, just make it fast. Those 5 words, whispered by a dying woman in a blood-soaked emergency room, would shatter 2 lives and rebuild them into something neither could have imagined. When billionaire CEO Elena Rourke collapsed in that ambulance bay, she had everything: power, wealth, an empire that bent to her will. But the man who saved her life? He had nothing but a daughter's crayon drawing in his pocket and ghosts from a war he couldn't forget. This is the story of how one whispered plea changed everything. Stay until the end and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights of St. Meridian Hospital hummed their midnight song, a sterile, lonely frequency that Noah Briggs had learned to tune out over the past 3 years. His footsteps echoed through the 4th-floor corridor, rubber-soled boots squeaking against linoleum that gleamed like ice under the harsh overhead glow. He adjusted the radio clip to his belt, checked his watch, 11:47 p.m., and continued his rounds with the mechanical precision of a man who had walked these same hallways 1,000 times before. But precision was all Noah had left. At 34 years old, he moved through the world like a ghost, present but unseen, functional but disconnected. His security guard uniform hung slightly loose on his frame, navy blue fabric worn soft at the elbows. The hospital ID badge clipped to his chest read N. Briggs, Night Shift Security, accompanied by a photo where his eyes looked somewhere past the camera, past everything, into a middle distance only he could see. He paused at the pediatric ward window, a habit he'd developed without conscious thought. Through the glass, he could see the dimmed hallway beyond, walls decorated with hand-painted murals of cartoon animals and rainbows. One room's door stood slightly ajar, and inside, a small child slept peacefully while a parent dozed in the chair beside the bed. Noah's hand moved unconsciously to his chest pocket, fingers brushing the folded piece of paper he kept there. Sophie's drawing. His daughter had made it 3 weeks ago, using every crayon in the 64-count box they'd bought at the dollar store. The paper was worn now from constant folding and unfolding, but the stick figure in the center was still clear. A man with a wide smile and a badge surrounded by hearts and stars. Above it, in Sophie's careful 6-year-old handwriting, "Daddy is my hero." Noah's jaw tightened. He refolded the drawing and tucked it back into his pocket, continuing his rounds. Hero. The word tasted like ash in his mouth. He descended the east stairwell, his footsteps metallic against the concrete steps, each one a measured beat that kept him anchored to the present. But the present was always threatening to slip away, wasn't it? The past had teeth. It could drag you back when you least expected it. The smell of disinfectant could become the smell of burning diesel. The squeak of a gurney wheel could become the sound of a Humvee door. The fluorescent lights could flicker, and suddenly you're back there, in the desert, holding pressure on a wound that won't stop bleeding, screaming for a medevac that's still 12 minutes out. Noah stopped on the landing between the 2nd and 3rd floors. He pressed his palm against the cool concrete wall, closed his eyes, and counted. 1. Breathe in. 2. Breathe out. 3. You're here. St. Meridian Hospital, Seattle, not Kandahar. 4. You're safe. Sophie is safe. 5. Let it go. The radio crackled to life at his hip. Noah, you copy? It was Marcus, the other night guard stationed at the main entrance. Noah unclipped the radio. Copy. What's up? Just checking in. All quiet on the Western Front? The phrase made Noah's chest constrict. Marcus didn't know, couldn't have known what those words meant to him, but he kept his voice level. All quiet, finishing the upper floors now. Roger that. Coffee machine's acting up again if you're interested in taking a look. Thing's possessed, I swear. I'll check it after rounds. You're a saint, man. Marcus out. Noah clipped the radio back to his belt and continued down the stairs. Marcus was a good guy. Retired postal worker, grandfather of 5, worked nights to supplement his Social Security. He told the same 3 jokes on rotation and brought homemade cookies every Friday. Noah appreciated the steadiness of him, the uncomplicated kindness that didn't ask questions about the faded tattoos on Noah's forearms, or why a man with a medical discharge from the Army was working hospital security instead of doing something that actually used his training. Because nobody asked. That was the agreement, unspoken but understood. Noah showed up on time, did his job, kept to himself, And in return, the hospital left him alone. That's all he wanted, to be left alone. To work his shifts, pick up Sophie from his neighbor Mrs. Chen's apartment, read her bedtime stories, and hold her until the nightmares went away. To build a small, quiet life in the spaces between the wreckage of what he used to be. Noah emerged from the stairwell into the main lobby. The space transformed at night. During the day, it bustled with visitors and patients, but now it was cavernous and empty. The information desk unstaffed, the gift shop darkened. Only the eternal flame of the hospital's mission statement glowed on the far wall. To heal with compassion, to serve with excellence. His boots carried him past the cafeteria, past the chapel, past the elevators that would take you to surgery or maternity or oncology, all the places where life happened in its most raw and desperate forms. Noah had learned not to think about the stories unfolding in the rooms above him. That way lay madness, or at least insomnia. He was just the night watchman, here to check doors and respond to alarms, not to get involved in the human drama playing out on every floor. He turned down the corridor toward the emergency room entrance. This was usually his last stop before circling back to the break room, filing his report, and waiting for his shift to end at 7 a.m. The ER had its own security during the day, but at night, Noah made sure the ambulance bay doors were secure and the waiting room was clear. Standard protocol. Simple. Uncomplicated. That's when he heard it, the screech of tires on asphalt, sharp and violent, followed by the slam of car doors. Noah's body reacted before his mind caught up. Training that had been drilled into him until it lived in his muscle memory took over. He was moving toward the emergency entrance, pace quickening, right hand instinctively reaching for his radio, while his left hand moved to his hip, where his service weapon used to be, where there was now only empty space and air. Through the glass doors, he could see a black sedan stopped at an awkward angle in the ambulance bay, driver's door hanging open. Two figures emerged from the back seat, supporting a third person between them. Noah pushed through the entrance doors. "Just get her inside, just get her inside," a man's voice, panicked and breaking. The woman between the two men wasn't walking. She was being dragged, head lolling, feet scraping against the concrete. In the harsh sodium lights of the ambulance bay, Noah could see that her white blouse wasn't white anymore. It was red, dark, spreading red that looked black in the artificial light. Blood. So much blood. The man on her left, middle-aged, expensive suit now ruined, looked up and saw Noah. "Help us! Please, someone help us!" Noah was already moving. "Get her inside! Now!" They staggered through the entrance. The automatic doors slid open with their usual gentle whoosh, completely at odds with the urgency of the moment. The waiting room was empty except for a nurse at the triage desk who looked up from her computer, saw the blood, and immediately grabbed the phone. "I need a trauma team to the ER entrance. Now!" She slammed down the phone and rushed around the desk. "What happened?" "She was shot," the man in the suit started to say, but Noah was already easing the woman down onto the waiting room floor. The chairs were too unstable, too far from help. The floor was better. "Everyone step back," Noah said. His voice had changed. It was calmer now, steadier, layered with an authority that hadn't been there moments before. "Give her space." The woman's eyes fluttered open. Even through the haze of shock and pain, Noah could see they were startling. Sharp blue, the kind that probably missed nothing in a boardroom but now struggled to focus on his face above her. Her lips moved. A whisper, barely audible. Noah leaned closer. "Ma'am, stay with me. Help is coming." "Please." Her hand lifted weakly, fingers grasping at Noah's sleeve. "Just make it fast. I don't want to feel the pain." The words hit him like a physical blow. He'd heard them before. Different voice, different place, but the same desperate plea. The same resignation. "Hey!" Noah caught her hand, held it firm. "Look at me. You're not dying. Not tonight. I've got you." Behind him, voices shouted. The nurse was calling for the trauma team again, more urgently now. The men who'd brought the woman in were talking over each other, explaining what happened. An attack, a robbery. They didn't know. It happened so fast. Noah tuned them all out. His world narrowed to the woman in front of him and the medical training that had been seared into his brain during 18 months of combat deployment. He'd been a medic once. A good one. Before everything went to hell. before he'd tried to save too many and lost too many and came home with hands that shook and a mind that wouldn't let him sleep. But his hands weren't shaking now. "Where's she hit?" the nurse asked, dropping to her knees beside Noah. "Left side below the ribs, possible through and through." Noah's fingers moved with practiced efficiency, pressing against the woman's abdomen, checking for the telltale signs of internal bleeding. "Pulse is rapid, weak. She's going into shock." The nurse stared at him. "Are you a doctor?" "Medic? Army." Noah didn't look up. He was already stripping off his security jacket, balling it up, pressing it against the wound. "I need gauze, trauma pads, anything you've got. The trauma team isn't here yet. Move." The nurse scrambled back to the triage desk, grabbing supplies from the emergency cabinet. Noah maintained pressure on the wound, his other hand checking the woman's pulse at her neck. Too fast, too weak. Her skin was cold and clammy. "Stay with me," he said again, this time quieter, meant only for her. "What's your name?" Her eyes found his again. "Elena." "Elena, I'm Noah. You're going to be fine." "You're lying." But there was something in her eyes, not quite hope, but not quite resignation either. A flicker of fight. "Yeah, I'm lying." Noah accepted the gauze packs the nurse thrust at him, ripping them open with his teeth. "But you're still going to be fine, because I said so, and I'm very stubborn." The ghost of a smile touched Elena's lips. Then her eyes rolled back and her body went limp. "Elena!" Noah pressed 2 fingers to her carotid. Still there, still beating. "She's unconscious. Where the hell is the trauma team?" "Coming!" The nurse had the phone pressed to her ear again. "They're coming, they're—" The emergency room doors burst open. A team in scrubs rushed in. 2 doctors, 3 nurses, pushing a crash cart and a gurney. They moved with the controlled chaos of people who did this every night, who had seen it all before. "What have we got?" The lead doctor, a woman with gray-streaked hair and sharp eyes, was already snapping on gloves as she assessed the scene. "GSW to the left abdomen," Noah reported, his voice slipping into the clinical detachment he'd learned in field hospitals. "Approximately 15 minutes since injury. Patient lost consciousness 30 seconds ago. Pulse 120 and thready. I've been maintaining pressure on the wound site." The doctor's eyes flicked to Noah's face, then to his hands pressed against the makeshift bandage. "You have medical training?" "Army medic, 68W. Something changed in the doctor's expression. Recognition. Respect. "Good work. We'll take it from here." The team swarmed around them. Noah felt hands on his shoulders, gently moving him back as they transferred Elena onto the gurney. He stood up, his legs stiff from kneeling, and watched as they wheeled her toward the trauma bay. His jacket, now soaked with blood, lay discarded on the waiting room floor. One of the doctors was calling out orders. "Start 2 large-bore IVs, normal saline wide open, type and cross for 6 units, get X-ray standing by." And then they were through the doors and gone, leaving Noah standing in a waiting room that suddenly felt very quiet. His hands were covered in blood. Elena's blood. He stared at them for a moment, at the dark red staining his palms, filling the creases of his knuckles, crusting under his fingernails. The fluorescent lights made it look almost black. "Sir?" Noah looked up. The triage nurse was standing in front of him, holding a box of gloves and a bottle of hand sanitizer. Her name tag read Sarah. "You probably want to clean up," Sarah said gently. "There's a staff bathroom just down the hall." Noah nodded, but didn't move. He was looking at the entrance doors, at the black sedan still parked crookedly in the ambulance bay. The 2 men who'd brought Elena in were standing outside now, one of them on his phone, the other pacing. "Is she going to make it?" Noah asked. Sarah's expression softened. "Dr. Morrison is one of the best trauma surgeons on the West Coast. If anyone can save her, it's Dr. Morrison." She paused. "You probably saved her life, you know. The pressure you maintained, the way you kept her calm, those extra minutes matter." Noah said nothing. He'd heard variations of this speech before, from other nurses in other hospitals in other countries. Sometimes the patients made it, sometimes they didn't. The mathematics of trauma care were cruel and absolute. "Come on," Sarah said. "Let's get you cleaned up. Then I'll need to take your statement for the police report." The police. Right. Because this was a shooting, which meant there would be questions and paperwork and complications. Noah felt exhaustion wash over him. The adrenaline that had carried him through the last 15 minutes was ebbing, leaving behind only the familiar weight of too many nights with too little sleep. But he followed Sarah down the hallway to the staff bathroom. The fluorescent lights here were even harsher, bouncing off white tile that seemed to amplify every imperfection. Noah stood at the sink and turned on the water, watching it run clear for a moment before plunging his hands under the stream. The water turned pink, then red, then pink again as he scrubbed. The blood dissolved and spiraled down the drain, but the feeling of it, the warm stickiness, the weight of someone's life literally in his hands, that didn't wash away so easily. In the mirror above the sink, Noah caught sight of his own reflection. He looked tired, more than tired, hollowed out. There were shadows under his eyes that no amount of sleep would fix, and new gray threading through the dark hair at his temples. When had that happened? He dried his hands on paper towels and stared at his forearms. The tattoos were visible now that his jacket was gone, numbers and letters in military code, faded now but still legible. Reminders of who he used to be, who he couldn't be anymore. His work shirt was splattered with blood. He'd have to explain that to his supervisor. Another complication, another conversation he didn't want to have. But when Noah walked back out to the waiting room, Sarah wasn't alone. 2 police officers were there along with the men from the sedan. And standing near the emergency room doors, looking completely out of place in his pressed suit and designer shoes, was someone Noah recognized from the hospital's board of directors photos in the main lobby. "That's him," one of the men from the sedan said, pointing at Noah. "That's the man who helped Elena." All eyes turned to Noah. He had the sudden, uncomfortable sensation of being spotlighted, exposed. It made his skin crawl. One of the police officers, a woman in her 40s with a no-nonsense expression, approached with a notebook. "Sir, I'm Officer Ramirez. I understand you were the first responder when the victim was brought in?" "I was doing my rounds. I heard the car and came to help." Noah kept his answers short, factual. He'd learned that was best with police. Give them what they need, nothing extra. "Can you walk me through what you observed?" Noah recounted the events in the same clinical tone he'd used with the trauma doctor. Time, actions, observations. He left out the part about Elena's whispered plea that felt private somehow, a moment not meant for police reports. Officer Ramirez wrote everything down, asked a few clarifying questions, then closed her notebook. "You may need to provide additional testimony if this case goes to trial, but that's all I need for now. Thank you for your cooperation." She moved away to interview the men from the sedan, and Noah thought he might finally be able to slip away. But the man in the expensive suit stepped forward. "Mr. Briggs," he extended his hand. "Robert Chen. I'm Elena Rourke's personal attorney." Noah shook his hand reluctantly. "Is she going to be okay?" "The doctors are working on her now." Robert's expression was grave. "Mr. Briggs, I want you to know Elena is someone very important. What you did tonight, I can't thank you enough." "I didn't do anything special. Anyone would have—" "Anyone didn't," Robert's voice was firm. "You did. And when Elena wakes up, she'll want to thank you herself." Noah felt something twist in his gut. He didn't want thanks. He didn't want recognition. He just wanted to finish his shift, go home, and hug his daughter until the smell of blood left his nostrils. "I need to get back to work," Noah said, but Robert pulled out a business card, pressed it into Noah's hand. "My number. Please call me if you think of anything else about tonight, or if you need anything at all." Noah pocketed the card without looking at it. He nodded to Officer Ramirez, to Sarah, to Robert, and then he walked away. Back down the corridor, back to the break room, back to his locker where a clean jacket waited. He changed shirts, filed his incident report with Marcus, who gaped at him when he heard what happened, and spent the rest of his shift checking doors and windows with mechanical efficiency, trying not to think about blue eyes and whispered pleas and the way Elena's hand had gripped his sleeve like an anchor. When 7 a.m. finally arrived, Noah clocked out, walked to the parking lot, and sat in his 15-year-old Honda Civic for 5 minutes before he could make himself turn the key. His hands were shaking now. The delayed reaction, the adrenaline crash, always happened after, just had to ride it out. By the time he pulled up to his apartment building, a shabby 3-story complex in a neighborhood that was optimistically called transitioning, the shaking had mostly stopped. He climbed the stairs to the second floor, walked past Mrs. Chen's apartment. He'd pick up Sophie after he'd slept a few hours, and let himself into his own unit. The apartment was small but clean. Noah was meticulous about that. Everything in its place, nothing that could surprise or startle. Sophie's toys were organized in bins in the living room corner. The kitchen was spotless. The only decoration on the walls was Sophie's artwork, taped up in a gallery that grew every week. Noah dropped his keys in the bowl by the door, kicked off his boots, and made it as far as the couch before exhaustion pulled him under. He lay down, still in his work pants and clean shirt, and stared at the ceiling. In his mind, he kept seeing Elena's face, the way her eyes had focused on him, even through the pain, the way she'd said please, like she'd already given up hope but was asking anyway. He thought about Sophie's drawing, still in his jacket pocket down in his locker. Daddy is my hero. Heroes don't have nightmares. Heroes don't wake up in cold sweats, thinking they're back in the desert. Heroes don't take night shift security jobs because they can't handle the responsibility of actually saving lives anymore. But tonight, for just a few minutes, Noah had remembered what it felt like to be useful, to be needed, to have hands that could do something more than check locks and file reports. It terrified him. He closed his eyes and waited for sleep that wouldn't come. Outside, the morning sun was rising over Seattle. In the hospital, 6 miles away, Elena Rourke lay in post-op recovery, alive because a man she'd never met had refused to let her die. And in a penthouse apartment across the city, her assistant was already fielding calls from board members and business partners, all wanting to know the same thing: who attacked the Elena Rourke and why? But Elena, swimming up through the fog of anesthesia, could only remember one thing clearly: the night security guard's steady voice promising her that she wasn't going to die, that he had her, that he was very stubborn. She believed him, and Elena Rourke never forgot a debt. 3 days passed before Noah saw her again. 3 days of restless sleep interrupted by dreams where the blood wouldn't stop flowing, where he pressed and pressed against wounds that kept opening wider, where voices whispered, "Please, just make it fast," in an endless loop. 3 days of Sophie asking why Daddy looked so tired, of forcing smiles over breakfast cereal, of walking her to school and pretending everything was normal when nothing felt normal anymore. The hospital had given him 2 paid days off, standard procedure after a traumatic incident, his supervisor explained, though Noah suspected it had more to do with the dozen reporters who'd shown up asking about the mysterious security guard who'd saved Elena Rourke's life. Apparently someone had leaked the story, because by Tuesday morning, Noah's phone was buzzing with calls from numbers he didn't recognize, and his email inbox was flooded with interview requests. He ignored them all. On Wednesday, he returned to work. Marcus greeted him at the security desk with a bear hug that lifted Noah's feet off the ground and a chocolate muffin from the good bakery 3 blocks over. "My man, the hero of St. Meridian." Marcus's grin was infectious, his pride genuine. "They're saying you saved Elena Rourke's life." "Elena Rourke, do you know who that woman is?" Noah extracted himself from the embrace and set his lunch bag down on the desk. "Someone who got shot and needed help. Someone who—" Marcus shook his head in disbelief. "Brother, that woman runs the 3rd largest tech investment firm on the West Coast. She's worth more than this entire hospital. Forbes called her the Iron Lady of Venture Capital, and you saved her life. Anyone would have done the same thing. But they didn't, you did." Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. "The hospital administrator wants to see you before your shift, by the way. 3rd floor, executive offices." Noah felt his stomach drop. "Why?" "Didn't say. But hey, maybe they're giving you a raise. God knows you deserve one." The executive offices occupied the entire west wing of the 3rd floor, a world away from the sterile functionality of the hospital's medical floors. Here, there was carpet instead of linoleum, artwork instead of safety posters, and a receptionist who smiled at Noah like he was someone important instead of just another employee. "Mr. Briggs, Administrator Walsh is expecting you, right through that door." Janet Walsh's office was impressive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Seattle skyline, a desk that probably cost more than Noah's car, framed medical degrees and civic awards covering one entire wall. Walsh herself was in her early 60s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, with the kind of presence that made people sit up straighter without her saying a word. She stood when Noah entered, came around her desk to shake his hand. "Mr. Briggs? Thank you for coming. Please, sit." Noah sat in one of the leather chairs facing her desk, feeling distinctly out of place in his security uniform. Walsh settled back into her own chair and folded her hands on the desk. "I'll be direct," she said. "What you did Sunday night was extraordinary. You saved a woman's life with quick thinking and expert medical care. The hospital board and I want to formally recognize your actions." "That's not necessary, ma'am." "Perhaps not necessary, but deserved." Walsh opened a folder on her desk. "I've been reviewing your employment file. You've been with us for 3 years, consistently excellent performance reviews. Never late, never absent except for—" She paused, reading something. "Your daughter's school events. Sophie, correct?" Noah tensed. "Yes, ma'am." "Mr. Briggs, I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to know there's no wrong answer. Why are you working night security when you have advanced medical training?" The question hit like a fist to the solar plexus. Noah had spent 3 years avoiding exactly this conversation. He kept his face neutral, his voice steady. "Night shift works better with my daughter's schedule." That's a practical answer, but it's not the whole answer, is it? Walsh's expression wasn't judgmental, just curious, understanding even. Noah realized she probably knew more about him than she was letting on. His discharge paperwork would be in that file. The medical separation, the diagnosis that meant he'd never work as a combat medic again. "I'm happy with my current position," Noah said carefully. Walsh studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, I won't push. But Mr. Briggs, I want you to know that if you ever want to discuss other opportunities at St. Meridian, positions that might make use of your medical background, my door is open." She closed the folder and pulled out an envelope. "In the meantime, the board has approved a commendation and a bonus. It's not much, but it's our way of saying thank you." Noah accepted the envelope reluctantly. "Thank you, ma'am." "There's one more thing." Walsh's expression shifted, became more businesslike. "We've received multiple requests from media outlets wanting to interview you. The hospital's communications team can handle those requests if you'd like, or we can simply decline them all on your behalf. What would you prefer?" "Decline them, please." "Done." Walsh stood, signaling the meeting was over. "Mr. Briggs, you did something remarkable. Not everyone gets to be a hero. You should be proud." Noah left the office feeling more unsettled than when he'd entered. The envelope sat heavy in his pocket as he took the stairs down to the security office to start his shift. Inside was a check for $5,000, more money than Noah had seen at once since his discharge payment from the Army. He thought about Sophie's upcoming birthday, the new winter coat she needed, the leak in the bathroom ceiling that the landlord kept promising to fix. The money would help. It would help a lot, but it still felt like he was being paid for something he should have done for free. The shift started normally enough. Noah did his rounds, checked in with Marcus, investigated a noise complaint on the 5th floor that turned out to be a janitor's cart with a squeaky wheel. He was walking past the main lobby around 10 p.m. when he saw her. Elena Rourke stood near the information desk, flanked by 2 men in dark suits that screamed private security, and the same attorney who'd pressed his business card into Noah's hand 3 nights ago. She was dressed in an elegant charcoal pantsuit, her dark hair pulled back severely, and despite the obvious pallor of her skin and the way she held herself slightly too carefully, she looked every inch the billionaire CEO Marcus had described. She was also staring directly at Noah. For a moment, they just looked at each other across the lobby. Noah in his rumpled security uniform, Elena in her armor of expensive tailoring and controlled composure. Then she said something to the attorney and started walking toward Noah with slow, measured steps. The security detail followed like shadows. Noah's first instinct was to turn around and walk away. Just disappear into the hallways, fade back into invisibility, where he belonged. But his feet wouldn't move. He stood frozen as Elena approached, watching the way she carried herself despite obvious pain, the determination in her sharp blue eyes. She stopped 3 feet away from him. Up close, Noah could see the fine lines of strain around her eyes, the way her jaw was tight with what was probably considerable discomfort. She'd been shot 4 days ago. She should be in bed, not standing in a hospital lobby at 10 p.m. Mr. Briggs. Her voice was exactly what he'd expected, cultured, controlled, with an edge that suggested she was used to being obeyed. But there was something else there, too, something softer. I've been looking for you. Ma'am, you should be resting. A flicker of something crossed her face, amusement maybe. That's what everyone keeps telling me, I'm not very good at resting. You were shot. Yes, I'm aware. She glanced down at her left side, where Noah knew the bandages would be hidden under her suit jacket. I'm told I would have bled out if not for you. The doctor said your quick intervention is the only reason I survived long enough to reach surgery. Noah said nothing. What was there to say? Elena's attorney stepped forward, extending his hand. We met briefly the other night. Robert Chen. Miss Rourke has been quite insistent about finding you. Noah shook his hand but kept his attention on Elena. She looked like she might collapse at any moment, though she was clearly fighting not to show it. Pride or stubbornness, probably both. Mr. Briggs, Elena said, I came here to thank you. You saved my life. That's not a debt I take lightly. You don't owe me anything. I disagree. She reached into her jacket. The movement made her wince and pulled out what looked like a check. This is… No. Noah took a step back. I don't want your money. Elena's eyebrows rose. Clearly, she wasn't used to people refusing her. Mr. Briggs, you don't understand. This is… I understand perfectly. You want to pay me for helping you. I don't want to be paid. Everyone wants something. Elena's voice had sharpened, taken on a harder edge. Name it, whatever you need. Better housing? A new car? Your daughter's education? I've had my team look into… You looked into my daughter? The words came out harsher than Noah intended, but the thought of this woman, this stranger, investigating Sophie made his protective instincts flare. You had no right. I wanted to know who saved my life. Now you know. Can I get back to work? The attorney looked shocked. The security detail tensed. Even Elena seemed taken aback, but there was something else in her expression now. Interest, maybe. Like Noah had just become a puzzle she needed to solve. Mr. Briggs. Ma'am, you should go home. Rest. Take care of yourself. Noah's voice was gentler now, because, despite his anger, he could see how much this conversation was costing her. I'm glad you're okay, really, but I don't need anything from you. He turned to walk away, but Elena's voice stopped him. Why not? Noah looked back over his shoulder. Why not what? Why don't you need anything? Everyone needs something. Money, recognition, status, opportunity. But you're walking away from all of it. Why? Because accepting her gratitude meant accepting that what he had done mattered. Because it meant acknowledging that maybe he wasn't completely broken, wasn't completely useless. And that thought terrified him more than any nightmare. Because if he let himself care again, let himself be more than just a night watchman keeping his head down and his past buried, then he'd have to face all the ways he'd failed before. But Noah didn't say any of that. Instead, he just said, I have everything I need. Then he walked away, leaving Elena Rourke standing in the lobby with her check still in her hand and questions in her eyes. The rest of his shift passed in a blur. Noah went through the motions of his rounds, but his mind was elsewhere, replaying the conversation. He'd been rude, probably crossed some line he didn't even know existed. Tomorrow, Administrator Walsh would probably call him back to her office to tell him that insulting billionaire donors wasn't part of his job description. But when Noah clocked out at 7 a.m. and checked his phone, there were no angry messages from his supervisor. Just a text from Mrs. Chen saying Sophie had eaten a good breakfast and was excited about show and tell at school today, and another text from an unknown number. The message was brief. I'm sorry for overstepping. I hope you'll reconsider allowing me to express my gratitude properly. Elena Rourke. Noah stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it and put his phone away. Sophie was waiting for him when he picked her up from Mrs. Chen's apartment. Already dressed in her favorite purple dress with the pockets, her backpack almost as big as she was. She crashed into his legs with a hug that nearly knocked him over. Daddy, Mrs. Chen made pancakes! Did she? Noah scooped Sophie up, pressed his nose against her hair, breathed in the smell of strawberry shampoo and maple syrup. This was everything he needed. Did you save me one? Nope, Sophie giggled. I ate them all. I'm a pancake monster. Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway, smiling. She was 72, widowed, and had been watching Sophie since Noah started working nights. She refused to take more than $20 a night, no matter how much Noah argued, and always made sure Sophie was fed and happy. She was good as gold, Mrs. Chen said. Did all her homework last night, brushed her teeth without being asked. You're raising a good one, Noah. Thanks to you, Noah said sincerely. I don't know what we'd do without you. Oh, hush, it's my pleasure. Now go on, get this girl to school before she's late. The drive to Sophie's elementary school took 15 minutes through morning traffic. Sophie chattered the entire way about show and tell and how Jimmy Henderson was bringing his dad's baseball signed by some player Noah had never heard of, and how she was bringing the rock she'd found at the park that kind of looked like a turtle if you squinted. Noah parallel parked outside the school, a squat brick building that had probably been there since the 70s, and walked Sophie to the entrance. Other parents streamed past them, some in business suits heading to downtown offices, others in workout clothes heading to yoga or the gym. Noah, still in his security uniform because he hadn't had time to change, felt distinctly out of place. Sophie gripped his hand tighter as they approached the entrance. Daddy? Yeah, sweetheart? Are you okay? The question caught him off guard. Noah knelt down so he was at Sophie's eye level. Why do you ask that? You seem sad, like you're thinking about sad things. 6 years old, and she could read him better than anyone. Noah forced a smile. I'm not sad. I'm just tired. Night shift, remember? Sophie studied his face with those serious brown eyes. Her mother's eyes, though they'd lost that haunted quality that had defined Maria's last year. If you're sad, you can talk to me. That's what you always tell me. Noah's chest tightened. He pulled Sophie into a hug, held her close. You're absolutely right, and I promise I'm okay. Now go learn something amazing today, all right? Okay. Sophie hugged him back, then pulled away and skipped toward the school entrance. She turned back once to wave, her backpack bouncing, and Noah waved back until she disappeared inside. He sat in his car for a few minutes after, just breathing. Sophie was the reason he got up every day, the reason he kept going when the nightmares got too bad, when the guilt threatened to drown him. As long as she was happy, as long as she was safe, nothing else mattered. His phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. I understand your reluctance, but I'm not going away. We need to talk. ER. Noah turned off his phone and drove home. Over the next week, Elena Rourke proved she wasn't exaggerating about not going away. She didn't show up at the hospital again. Noah suspected someone had convinced her that stalking him at work wasn't the best approach. But her presence was felt in other ways. A massive fruit basket appeared at the security desk with a card. For the night shift team, with gratitude, Elena Rourke. Marcus was thrilled. Noah ignored it. Then a new coffee machine showed up in the break room, one of those fancy Italian ones that probably cost more than Noah's monthly rent. Another card. Every hero deserves good coffee. ER. Noah started making his coffee at home. On Friday, Noah returned to his apartment after his shift to find a certified letter from a law firm. Inside was a formal letter offering him a position as Director of Medical Response Training at the Rourke Foundation, complete with a salary that made his eyes water and benefits that included full health coverage and a college fund for Sophie. Noah burned the letter in his kitchen sink and watched the ashes wash down the drain. On Monday, he arrived at work to find Administrator Walsh waiting for him at the security desk. Mr. Briggs, my office, now. Noah followed her upstairs, dread pooling in his stomach. This was it. He'd finally crossed a line, insulted someone too important, and now he was going to lose the one job that let him keep his head above water and be there for Sophie. But when Walsh closed her office door and gestured for him to sit, her expression wasn't angry. It was concerned. Mr. Briggs, I'm going to ask you something as a personal favor. Will you please just talk to Elena Rourke? Noah blinked. Ma'am? I've had 5 calls from her assistant this week. 5. All asking about you, about your schedule, about how they can reach you. She's making donations to the hospital, very generous donations. And while I appreciate her philanthropy, I'm starting to worry that she's doing it to get access to you. I don't want to talk to her. I understand that. But Mr. Briggs, Elena Rourke is not a woman who gives up easily. She built $1 billion empire from nothing. She doesn't know how to quit. And right now, you're her mission. Walsh leaned forward. I'm not ordering you to talk to her, but I am suggesting that one conversation might be less disruptive than this ongoing campaign. Noah wanted to argue, wanted to refuse. But Walsh had a point. Elena wasn't going to stop, and the longer this went on, the more complicated his life would become. Fine, he said. One conversation. Then she leaves me alone. Walsh looked relieved. I'll arrange something. The meeting was set for Tuesday afternoon, Noah's day off, at a coffee shop 2 blocks from the hospital, neutral territory. Noah arrived 10 minutes early, ordered a black coffee, and sat in the back corner where he could see both the entrance and the exit. Elena arrived exactly on time, alone, except for one security guard who waited outside. She moved better than she had a week ago, less carefully, with more of the decisive confidence Noah had read about in the business articles Marcus kept showing him. She ordered something complicated at the counter, then spotted Noah and made her way to his table. Thank you for coming, she said, sliding into the chair across from him. I know you didn't want to. Ms. Rourke. Elena. Please. Elena. Noah wrapped his hands around his coffee cup. You need to stop. Stop what? The gifts, the job offers, the donations to the hospital, all of it. Elena's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. I'm trying to say thank you. You already said thank you. I heard you. Now you need to move on. I can't. The words came out sharper than Noah expected. Elena took a breath, visibly composing herself. Mr. Briggs, Noah, I've spent 15 years building my company. I've made billion-dollar decisions. I've stared down corporate raiders and hostile takeovers. I don't scare easily. But when I was lying in that ambulance bay, bleeding out on concrete, I was terrified. And then you were there. Noah said nothing. He watched her hands. She was gripping her coffee cup so tightly, her knuckles were white. You told me I wasn't going to die, Elena continued. You told me you had me, and I believed you. Do you know how rare that is? To trust a complete stranger in your worst moment? To know, absolutely know, that someone won't let you down? I was doing my job. Your job is security, not emergency medicine. But you didn't hesitate. You didn't wait for someone else. You just acted. Elena leaned forward. I've built my entire career on reading people, Noah, on understanding what drives them, what they value, what they want. And you? You're an enigma. You don't want money. You don't want recognition. You don't want opportunity. So what do you want? I told you, I have everything I need. A daughter you're raising alone, an apartment in a building with a 92% crime rate, a job that pays minimum wage and wastes your talents. That's everything? Anger flared in Noah's chest. You don't know anything about my life. Then tell me. Elena's voice softened. Help me understand. Because right now, I owe you a debt I can never repay, and you won't let me even try. Do you know how that feels? Noah stared at her, at the genuine frustration and confusion in her eyes, at the way she sat across from him like they were equals, even though her watch probably cost more than his car, and she'd just casually admitted to making billion-dollar decisions. You really want to understand? Noah asked quietly. Yes. Fine. Noah set down his coffee cup. 4 years ago, I was a combat medic in Afghanistan. I was good at my job. I saved lives. I got promoted, got commendations, got told I was making a difference. And then one day my convoy hit an IED. Elena's expression shifted, became more careful. 3 soldiers died instantly, Noah continued. 2 more were critical. I did everything I was trained to do. I triaged, I stabilized, I called for medevac. But the chopper was 20 minutes out, and one of my guys, a kid named Tyler Harris from Nebraska, 19 years old, engaged to his high school sweetheart, he kept bleeding. I couldn't stop it. I tried everything, but I couldn't stop it. Noah's voice had gone flat, detached. It was the only way he could tell this story. Tyler died in my arms. Then the second soldier died before the chopper arrived. And I realized something. All my training, all my skill, all my determination, it didn't matter. Sometimes people die anyway. Sometimes you can do everything right and still fail. He looked up at Elena. I came home with PTSD, got medically discharged, and couldn't work as a medic anymore because my hands shake when I think too hard about that day. I take a security job because it's simple, it's safe, and it lets me be there for my daughter. That's my life. That's everything I need. The coffee shop was quiet around them. Someone's phone chimed. The espresso machine hissed. But at their table, Elena just sat very still, processing. "I'm sorry," she finally said, "for pushing, for investigating you, for everything. Now you understand why I don't want your gratitude, because I don't deserve it. I failed when it mattered most." "That's not true." "You weren't there." "No, but I was there when you saved my life." Elena's voice was firm now. "Noah, what happened in Afghanistan was a tragedy, but it doesn't erase what you did for me. You don't get to decide that one failure makes you worthless." "I'm not worthless. I'm just not a hero." "My arms say differently." Elena pushed up her sleeve, and Noah saw the faint scar on her wrist where she'd grabbed the nurse that night. "These are from me fighting to stay alive while you kept me from bleeding out. My surgeon says I had maybe 5 more minutes before I would have gone into irreversible shock. You gave me those 5 minutes." Noah wanted to argue, wanted to explain that saving one person didn't balance out losing 2, but Elena was looking at him with such intensity, such certainty, that the words died in his throat. "I'm not asking you to be a hero," Elena said quietly. "I'm just asking you to accept that you made a difference, that your life has value, that your daughter isn't wrong when she draws pictures of you with a cape." Noah's head snapped up. "How do you know about—" "Your neighbor Mrs. Chen is very proud of Sophie's artwork. She may have mentioned it to my assistant when we were trying to find a way to reach you." Elena had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "I know, more boundaries crossed. I'm sorry." Despite everything, Noah felt a smile tug at his lips. "You're relentless." "It's been mentioned before." Elena smiled back, and it transformed her face, made her look younger, less guarded. "Noah, I'm going to make you a deal. I'll stop the gifts and the job offers and the hovering. I'll leave you alone. But in return, I want you to accept one thing from me." "What?" "Dinner. Just dinner. Not at some fancy restaurant, not with attorneys or assistants or security teams, just you and me and Sophie if she'd like to come. Let me meet the daughter who keeps you grounded. Let me see what everything you need actually looks like." Noah opened his mouth to refuse, but something stopped him. Maybe it was the sincerity in Elena's eyes. Maybe it was the exhaustion of fighting against someone who clearly wasn't going to give up. Maybe it was Sophie's voice in his head asking if he was sad. "One dinner," he said finally. "Then we're even." Elena's smile widened. "Then we're even." They set a date for Friday evening. Elena suggested a family-friendly Italian place that Sophie would love. Promised no photographers or publicity, just a quiet meal. Noah agreed, though he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just made a mistake. But when he picked Sophie up from school that day and told her they were having dinner with a friend on Friday, her face lit up like Christmas morning. "A friend? You have a friend, Daddy?" "I guess I do." Sophie threw her arms around his neck. "I'm so happy. You need more friends. Mrs. Chen says so." Noah laughed despite himself, holding his daughter close. "Does she now?" "Yes. She says you're too lonely." "Are you lonely, Daddy?" Noah thought about the question seriously. He had Sophie and Mrs. Chen and Marcus at work. He had routines and responsibilities. He had walls that kept him safe and a life that was predictable. But lonely? "Sometimes," he admitted. "But I have you, so I'm never too lonely." Sophie pulled back to look at him seriously. "It's okay to have other friends too, Daddy. I won't be jealous." And somehow, that gave Noah permission to stop fighting quite so hard. Friday came faster than Noah expected. Noah spent Thursday night second-guessing everything. What did you wear to dinner with a billionaire? His closet offered limited options: work uniforms, old jeans, a few t-shirts that had seen better days, and one button-down shirt he'd bought for Sophie's kindergarten graduation. He settled on dark jeans and the button-down, then felt ridiculous and changed back into jeans and a clean t-shirt. Sophie, meanwhile, had no such crisis. She'd picked out her outfit 3 days in advance: the purple dress with pockets, her favorite cardigan with the rainbow buttons, and the light-up sneakers that Noah kept trying to convince her were too small. "They still fit, Daddy," Sophie insisted, jamming her feet into them Friday afternoon. "See? Sophie, your toes are literally touching the end. That means they fit perfectly." She stood up and stomped around the living room, the sneakers flashing with each step. "And Elena will love them." "Do you think she has light-up shoes?" Noah tried to imagine Elena Rourke in light-up sneakers and failed completely. "Probably not, sweetheart." "Then I can show her. Everyone should have light-up shoes." Sophie twirled, watching the lights flash in a circle. "Daddy, are you nervous?" "What makes you think I'm nervous?" "You changed your shirt 4 times, and you've been staring at your phone for like an hour." Noah glanced at his phone where Elena's last text sat unanswered. "Just making sure I have the right address." "Uh-huh." Sophie gave him a look that was far too knowing for a 6-year-old. "It's okay to be nervous, Daddy. New friends are scary sometimes." "When did you get so wise?" "I was born this way." Sophie grabbed her small backpack. She'd insisted on bringing her current library book and her turtle rock to show Elena. "Mrs. Chen says I'm an old soul." They left the apartment at 5:30, giving themselves plenty of time to navigate across town. Noah had checked the restaurant's location 3 times. It was in a neighborhood he rarely visited, where the buildings were renovated instead of run down, and the cars parked on the street cost more than his annual salary. But Elena had promised it was family-friendly, casual, the kind of place where light-up sneakers wouldn't raise eyebrows. Noah found parking 2 blocks away, and they walked hand in hand through the early evening streets. Sophie chattered about school, how Mia had brought her pet hamster for show and tell, and it had escaped and caused chaos. How their teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, had read them a story about dragons. How Sophie had gotten a gold star for her math worksheet. The restaurant was called Bella's, with a green awning and windows that glowed warm yellow in the fading light. Through the glass, Noah could see families at tables, children in high chairs, servers moving with practiced efficiency. It looked normal, unpretentious. He felt some of the tension ease from his shoulders. Elena was waiting just inside the entrance, and Noah almost didn't recognize her at first. Gone was the severe pantsuit and pulled-back hair. She wore dark jeans, actual jeans, and a soft gray sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked younger somehow, less guarded, though Noah could still see the careful way she held herself, protecting her injured side. "Noah. Sophie." Elena smiled, and it reached her eyes. "Thank you for coming." Sophie, never one for shyness, stepped forward immediately. "Hi. I'm Sophie Briggs, and I'm 6 years old, and I'm in 1st grade, and I brought my turtle rock to show you." She dug into her backpack and produced a smooth gray stone that did, if you squinted and tilted your head, kind of resemble a turtle. Elena crouched down, the movement made her wince slightly, and examined the rock with complete seriousness. "This is an excellent turtle rock. I can see the head right here, and these could be flippers." "That's exactly what I said," Sophie beamed. "Do you like turtles?" "I do. They're very patient creatures. And they live a long time, like 100 years sometimes. Did you know that?" "I did know that." Elena glanced up at Noah with an expression that might have been amusement. "Your daughter is very well informed about turtles." "We went through a turtle phase last month," Noah explained. "Before that it was dinosaurs. Next week it'll probably be something else." "Currently I'm interested in both turtles and space," Sophie announced. "But mostly turtles." The hostess led them to a booth near the back, away from the main dining area where things were noisier. Sophie climbed into her seat and immediately started examining the crayons and coloring sheet the hostess had provided. Noah slid in next to her, which put him directly across from Elena. For a moment, they just looked at each other. In the warm light of the restaurant, Elena's face showed signs of her ordeal, shadows under her eyes that makeup didn't quite hide, a tightness around her mouth that suggested she was still in some pain. But there was also something softer about her here, something more real. "How are you feeling?" Noah asked. "Really?" Elena considered the question. "Honestly, like I was shot 2 weeks ago. The doctors keep telling me I'm healing remarkably well, but remarkably well still involves a lot of pain medication and an inability to sleep on my left side." She picked up her water glass. "But I'm alive to complain about it, which is more than I had any right to expect that night." "You don't have to keep thanking me." I'm not thanking you. I'm stating facts. Elena's lips curved slightly. There's a difference. Sophie looked up from her coloring. Are you the lady my daddy saved? Elena's expression shifted, became gentler. I am. Your daddy is very brave. I know. He's the bravest. Sophie went back to coloring with absolute confidence in this truth. He kills spiders for me, even though he doesn't like them. And he checks under my bed for monsters every night. And he makes the best grilled cheese in the whole world. High praise, Elena said, and Noah could hear genuine warmth in her voice. The server arrived and they ordered spaghetti with meatballs for Sophie, chicken parmesan for Noah, and grilled salmon for Elena. Sophie monopolized the conversation while they waited for food, telling Elena about school and Mrs. Chen and her best friend Zoe, who was moving away next month, and how sad that made Sophie feel. It's really hard when someone you care about has to leave, Elena said quietly, and something in her tone made Noah wonder who she'd lost. Yeah. Sophie's face fell. I gave her my second favorite hair clip so she won't forget me. The purple one with butterflies. That was very thoughtful of you. Plus, Daddy says when you love someone, you have to show them, not just say it. Sophie looked at Noah. Right, Daddy? Right, sweetheart. Noah felt Elena's eyes on him, but didn't meet her gaze. The food arrived and they ate, conversation flowing more easily than Noah had expected. Elena asked Sophie about her favorite subjects in school, art and science, and what she wanted to be when she grew up. Sophie's answer changed every few minutes. An astronaut. No, a veterinarian. Wait, maybe an artist who draws space turtles. You have time to decide, Elena assured her. I changed my mind about what I wanted to do at least 100 times. What did you want to be? Sophie asked, twirling spaghetti around her fork with more enthusiasm than skill. When I was your age, a ballet dancer, then a teacher, then a lawyer, then a doctor. Elena cut her salmon carefully, precisely. It took me a long time to figure out what I was actually good at. What are you good at? Building things. Not with hammers and nails, but with ideas and people. I help other people make their businesses grow. Sophie considered this. That sounds nice. Helping people is important. Your daddy taught me that. Elena's eyes met Noah's across the table, and there was something vulnerable in her expression. I'd forgotten, for a while, how important it is. Noah didn't know what to say to that, so he focused on his chicken parmesan and let Sophie carry the conversation forward. His daughter had inherited his wife's gift for putting people at ease. Maria had been like that, able to talk to anyone, to find common ground with strangers. Noah had always been the quiet one, content to observe, but Maria had been the bridge between him and the world. He missed her. Even 4 years later, even after the worst of the grief had faded to a dull ache, he missed her. Daddy? Sophie was tugging on his sleeve. Elena asked you a question. Noah blinked, refocusing. Sorry. What was that? I asked how you ended up in Seattle, Elena said. Her tone was casual, but Noah could sense the real question underneath. How did a combat medic from wherever he was from end up working night security in a city where he clearly had no family, no support system, no roots? Long story, Noah said. We have time. Elena gestured at their half-eaten meals. Unless you'd rather not talk about it. Noah glanced at Sophie, who was busy constructing a spaghetti sculpture on her plate. He could deflect, change the subject, maintain the walls he'd built so carefully around his past. But sitting here in this warm restaurant with his daughter, humming tunelessly, and this woman who'd somehow slipped past his defenses without permission, Noah found he didn't have the energy to keep deflecting. My wife died 4 years ago, he said quietly. Cancer, fast and brutal. Sophie was 2. After Maria passed, there wasn't anything keeping me in Texas except memories I couldn't face. So I picked a city I'd never been to, packed what fit in my car, and drove until I hit the Pacific Ocean. Elena's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes softened. I'm so sorry. Sophie doesn't remember her. Sometimes I don't know if that makes it better or worse. I remember her a little, Sophie said, not looking up from her plate. I remember she smelled like flowers, and she sang a lot. Noah's throat tightened. Yeah, she did. She had a terrible voice, but she sang anyway. Like me, Sophie grinned. Mrs. Chen says I'm very enthusiastic but not very on key. The moment of heaviness broke, and Noah was grateful for Sophie's ability to find lightness in everything. They finished their meals and ordered dessert. Chocolate cake for Sophie, tiramisu for Elena. Nothing for Noah, though Sophie made him share her cake. Sophie asked if Elena had any kids, and something flickered across Elena's face before she shook her head. No, I never. The timing was never right. I was always too focused on work. She said it matter-of-factly, but Noah heard the regret underneath. It's not too late, Sophie said with the absolute certainty of someone who'd never encountered a problem that couldn't be solved. You could have kids now, or get a dog. Dogs are kind of like kids. Mrs. Chen has a dog named Buttons, and he's very sweet, but also very fat. Elena laughed, a real laugh, unguarded and genuine. A dog might be a good start. I want a dog, Sophie said, looking hopefully at Noah. Daddy says maybe when we have a bigger place. Maybe when we have a bigger place and I'm not working nights, Noah amended. Dogs need attention and walks and, I know, responsibility. Sophie sighed dramatically. Being 6 is hard. You can't do anything fun. You think eating chocolate cake isn't fun? Noah asked. Okay, you can do some fun things, but not the best fun things. They left the restaurant around 8, Sophie chattering away about her new favorite dessert and how she was definitely going to tell Zoe about the Turtle Rock conversation. Elena walked with them toward Noah's car, moving slowly in the cooling evening air. Thank you for tonight, Elena said when they reached the Honda. I haven't had a normal dinner in longer than I can remember. You're welcome. Noah unlocked the car and helped Sophie into her booster seat. She was already yawning, the combination of food and excitement catching up with her. Elena stood on the sidewalk, hands in her pockets, looking uncertain for the first time since Noah had met her. I know this was supposed to be one dinner and then we're even. But Noah, could we do this again? Not dinner necessarily, just spend time together? I'd like to be friends. The word hung in the air between them. Friends. Such a simple concept, yet Noah hadn't had a real friend since leaving Texas, Mrs. Chen was kind, but she was from a different generation, spoke a different language both literally and figuratively. Marcus was a work acquaintance, friendly but not close. And everyone else in Noah's life existed at arm's length, kept there deliberately. But Elena was asking, and Sophie was watching through the car window with hopeful eyes, and Noah was tired of saying no to everything. Friends, he agreed, but Elena, I need you to understand something. I can't be who I used to be. I can't be the hero you think you met that night. I'm just a guy trying to get by, trying to raise his daughter, trying to keep his head above water. That's all I can offer. That's all I'm asking for. Elena stepped closer, her voice dropping. Noah, I spend every day surrounded by people who want something from me. Money, connections, opportunities, favors. But you don't want anything. Do you know how rare that is? How exhausting it is to never know if someone likes you or just likes what you can do for them. Noah hadn't considered that. He'd been so focused on his own isolation that he'd never thought about how lonely it must be at the top, where every relationship was transactional, where trust was currency and vulnerability was weakness. I'm not good at this, Noah said. At friendship, at letting people in. I'm probably going to be a terrible friend. I'm probably going to be worse. Elena smiled slightly. I work 80-hour weeks. I'm terrible at remembering birthdays, and I've been told I can be aggressively persistent to the point of obnoxiousness. I've noticed. But I'm loyal, and I don't give up on people. And She paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. I need this. I need something real. And you and Sophie, you're the most real thing I've encountered in years. Noah thought about his conversation with Sophie about being lonely, about how his daughter, with her 6-year-old wisdom, had given him permission to have friends, about how he'd been so afraid of getting hurt again that he'd forgotten how to let anyone get close. Okay, he said, friends, but you have to meet me where I am. No fancy dinners or job offers or trying to fix my life. Just this. Normal. I can do normal. Elena held out her hand. I think. Noah shook it, her grip firm and warm. Through the car window, Sophie gave them a thumbs up, They exchanged numbers, real numbers this time, not Elena's assistant's line, and made vague plans to maybe see each other the following weekend. Elena waved to Sophie, who waved back enthusiastically, and then Noah was pulling away from the curb, watching Elena grow smaller in his rearview mirror until she disappeared around a corner. "I like her," Sophie announced from the back seat. "She's nice, and she's pretty, and she thinks my turtle rock is excellent." "She is nice," Noah agreed. "Are you really going to be friends with her, or were you just being polite?" Noah glanced at his daughter in the rearview mirror. "Really friends, I think." "Good," Sophie yawned hugely. "You need more friends, Daddy. You're too lonely." "So I've been told." The following week fell into its usual rhythm. Work, sleep, Sophie, repeat. But there was a difference now. Elena texted occasionally, never intrusive but present. Pictures of things she thought Sophie would like. A sea turtle at an aquarium she'd visited for a business meeting. A book about space that reminded her of their dinner conversation. Noah found himself responding, sharing pictures of Sophie's latest artwork or a particularly spectacular sunset from his hospital rounds. It was strange, foreign, but not entirely unwelcome. On Wednesday afternoon, Noah was grocery shopping with Sophie when his phone rang. Elena's name flashed on the screen. "Answer it, Daddy," Sophie insisted. She was sitting in the shopping cart, surrounded by cereal boxes and bags of apples. Noah answered. "Hello?" "Noah." Elena's voice was tense, controlled but strained. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to say no if it's too much." "What's wrong?" "I have a hospital charity gala on Saturday. It's at St. Meridian, actually. My company is one of the main donors. I usually go alone, but given recent events and the fact that I'm still recovering, my security team is insisting someone accompany me." She paused. "Would you consider going? Not as a date, just as a friend. Someone I trust." Noah stopped in the middle of the pasta aisle. "Elena, I know it's not your scene. I know you hate attention. But Noah, there will be 200 people there, most of whom I can't stand, and I need someone real. Please." In the background, Noah could hear voices, urgent, pressuring. Elena's world intruding on the quiet space they'd carved out. He should say no, should maintain his boundaries, keep his life simple and uncomplicated. "What time?" he heard himself ask. 7. "But Noah, it's formal. You'd need—" "I'll figure it out." Relief flooded Elena's voice. "Thank you. Really. I'll send details. And Noah, you can leave whenever you want. No pressure to stay the whole night." After they hung up, Sophie looked at him seriously. "Daddy, do you have fancy clothes for a gala?" Noah looked down at his faded jeans and 10-year-old jacket. "No, sweetheart, I really don't." Which is how Noah found himself in a department store on Friday evening, staring at racks of suits that cost more than his monthly rent, while Sophie sat in a chair nearby offering commentary. "That one's too shiny," she said, pointing at a gray suit. "And that one makes you look like a penguin." "They're all going to make me look like a penguin." A saleswoman approached, middle-aged, kind-eyed, clearly amused by Sophie's running commentary. "Can I help you find something?" "I need a suit for tomorrow night. Something not too expensive." The saleswoman's expression shifted, became more assessing. She looked Noah up and down, then nodded. "I think we can work with this. Follow me." 2 hours later, Noah walked out with a dark blue suit, a white shirt, a tie that Sophie had picked out because it had tiny dots that looked like stars, and a lighter wallet. The saleswoman had taken pity on him and found things on sale, but it still hurt. This suit cost more than he usually spent on clothes in a year. "You're going to look so handsome, Daddy," Sophie said as they walked to the car. "Like a movie star." "I'm going to look like an idiot. A handsome idiot." Saturday evening arrived too quickly. Mrs. Chen came over to stay with Sophie, bringing cookies and promises to let Sophie stay up an extra half hour. Sophie watched as Noah struggled with his tie for the third time, finally stepping in to help even though she barely reached his chest. "You're nervous again," she observed. "Very nervous." "Why?" "Elena's your friend." "Because I don't belong at fancy galas with fancy people. I belong here, with you, eating pizza and watching cartoons." Sophie straightened his tie. She'd watched enough YouTube videos to learn how, and patted his chest. You belong wherever you want to belong, Daddy. That's what you tell me when I'm scared about new things. Noah knelt down so they were eye level. When did you get so smart? I told you, I was born this way. Sophie kissed his cheek. Now go have fun with Elena, and don't worry, Mrs. Chen and I are going to eat all the cookies and stay up late, and you won't even be mad because you love me. Completely unacceptable behavior that I wholeheartedly support, Noah said, pulling her into a hug. Be good for Mrs. Chen. I'm always good, mostly good, sometimes good. The drive to St. Meridian felt surreal. Noah had walked these halls 100 times in his security uniform, invisible and unnoticed. Now he was walking through the main entrance in a suit that fit perfectly, toward a ballroom he'd only ever seen from the outside, to meet a woman who was slowly dismantling every wall he'd built. The ballroom was transformed. Crystal chandeliers threw prismed light across the space. Round tables dressed in white linens filled the room, each centerpiece a complex arrangement of orchids and candles. A string quartet played in one corner while servers moved through the crowd with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Everyone looked expensive, polished, like they belonged in a world Noah could never access. He spotted Elena immediately. She stood near the silent auction tables, wearing a floor-length emerald gown that should have looked out of place on her, but instead looked like armor. Her hair was up, revealing the elegant line of her neck, and even from across the room, Noah could see the professional mask she wore. The smile that didn't reach her eyes, the slight tension in her shoulders. Then she saw him. The mask cracked, just slightly, replaced by something genuine. She excused herself from the conversation she was trapped in and made her way toward Noah, moving carefully in heels that added 3 inches to her height. You came, she said, and Noah heard relief in her voice. I said I would. I know, but I half expected you to change your mind. Elena looked him up and down, and something soft entered her expression. You look good. I look uncomfortable. That too, but good. She linked her arm through his, the gesture casual but anchoring. Come on, let me introduce you to some people who will absolutely bore you to death, and you can rescue me by pretending we need to check on something important. The next hour was exactly as exhausting as Noah had feared. Elena dragged him from conversation to conversation, donors and board members and business partners whose names Noah forgot immediately. They asked what he did, and Elena smoothly deflected, describing him as a friend without elaboration. Noah was grateful she didn't announce him as the man who saved her life. Though he could see curiosity in people's eyes, speculation about who he was and why Elena Rourke had brought him. They were standing near the bar, Elena nursing a glass of sparkling water while pretending it was champagne, when someone called her name. A man approached, early 50s, expensive suit, the kind of confidence that came from old money and older privilege. Elena, looking radiant as always, he kissed her cheek, the gesture possessive enough to make Noah tense. I heard about your incident. Terrible business. Hello, Gregory. Elena's voice had gone cool, professional. I'm recovering well, thank you. Of course you are. You're too stubborn to let something like a gunshot wound slow you down. Gregory's eyes slid to Noah. And who's this? A friend. Noah Briggs. Gregory extended his hand, his grip just slightly too firm, a dominance play Noah recognized from military culture. Gregory Westbrook. I'm on the hospital board with Elena. Nice to meet you, Noah said, though it wasn't. Briggs. That name sounds familiar. Have we met before? Gregory was studying Noah's face now, recognition dawning. Wait, you're the security guard, the one who saved Elena. Elena's grip on Noah's arm tightened almost imperceptibly. Gregory. That's incredible. Gregory's laugh was loud, drawing attention from nearby conversations. Elena brought her rescue as her date? Wow. Talk about keeping things close to home. Something ugly flickered in his tone, something that made Noah's jaw clench. But before he could respond, Elena stepped forward, her voice dropping to a temperature that could freeze flames. Noah is my friend, Gregory, and if you're suggesting anything beyond that, I'd suggest you reconsider before you say something you'll regret at the next board meeting. Gregory raised his hands in mock surrender. Easy, Elena. I'm just surprised. You never bring anyone to these events, and then you show up with, well, his gaze raked over Noah dismissively. It's unexpected. Life's full of surprises. Elena's smile was sharp enough to cut. Now, if you'll excuse us, Noah and I were just leaving. She turned and walked toward the exit, Noah following in her wake. He could feel eyes tracking them, whispers starting behind raised hands. This would be gossip by morning, speculation about Elena Rourke and the mysterious man she'd brought to the gala. They made it to the lobby before Elena stopped, pressing her hand against her side where Noah knew the wound would be aching. Her breathing was controlled but strained. "That was a mistake," she said quietly. "I shouldn't have asked you to come. I just gave the gossip mill enough fuel to last a month." "Hey." Noah stepped in front of her, blocking her view of the ballroom. "Breathe, it's fine." "It's not fine. Gregory is going to tell everyone, and by Monday morning there will be articles speculating about us, and photographers outside your apartment, and—" "Elena," Noah's voice was firm. "Look at me." She did, her blue eyes bright with frustration and pain and something that might have been fear. "We're friends," Noah said simply. "That's the truth. So let them speculate. Let them write whatever they want. We know what's real. You don't understand what it's like. The attention, the scrutiny, the way they twist everything into— No, I don't. But I understand what it's like to let other people define who you are, to live your life trying to avoid their judgment." Noah thought about his apartment, his quiet routine, the walls he'd built. "I've spent 4 years hiding, Elena, trying to be invisible. And you know what? I'm tired. I'm tired of being afraid of what people think." Elena stared at him. "You're not afraid right now." "I'm terrified, but I'm here anyway." Something in her expression shifted, softened. "I really am a terrible friend. I dragged you into this circus, exposed you to people like Gregory, risked your privacy. You asked for help. I said yes, that's what friends do." Noah glanced back at the ballroom. "Do you need to stay? For the donors or the speeches or whatever?" "I should, but you don't want to." "God, no." Elena laughed, the sound tired but genuine. "I want to leave, go somewhere quiet, and pretend this whole night didn't happen." "Then let's go." "We can't just leave. People will notice." "Let them notice." Noah held out his hand. "Come on." Elena looked at his hand, then at his face, then back at his hand. Whatever internal debate she was having resolved itself quickly. She took his hand, her grip warm and certain, and together they walked out of St. Meridian Hospital into the cool Seattle night. Neither of them noticed the photographer in the parking lot or the way his camera flashed as they emerged into the darkness. Hands still linked, smiling like people who'd just escaped something oppressive and found freedom waiting on the other side. They ended up at a 24-hour diner 6 blocks from the hospital, the kind of place with cracked vinyl booths and laminated menus that hadn't changed since 1987. Elena looked absurdly out of place in her emerald gown, drawing stares from the handful of late-night customers, but she slid into the booth across from Noah like she belonged there. The waitress, a woman in her 60s with tired eyes and a coffee pot that never seemed to empty, approached with raised eyebrows. "Evening, folks. You two coming from somewhere fancy or heading somewhere fancy?" "Escaping somewhere fancy," Elena said, and the waitress laughed. "Best decision you'll make all night. What can I get you?" They ordered coffee and pie, apple for Noah, cherry for Elena, and sat in the fluorescent-lit booth while the city hummed outside the windows. Elena had kicked off her heels under the table, and Noah had loosened his tie, and for the first time all evening, he could breathe properly. "I can't believe we just walked out," Elena said, wrapping her hands around her coffee mug. "I've never done that before. Just left. People are going to be furious." "Good." Noah took a sip of his coffee. It was terrible, burnt and bitter, but somehow exactly what he needed. "Let them be furious. You don't owe them your entire evening." "I kind of do, though. They donated thousands of dollars to the hospital because I asked them to. The least I can do is suffer through rubber chicken and boring speeches." "Elena." Noah set down his mug and looked at her directly. "You were shot 3 weeks ago. You're still recovering. You shouldn't even be out of bed, let alone performing for people who think you owe them something." It's not that simple. Why not? Elena was quiet for a moment, tracing the rim of her mug with one finger. Because if I stop performing, if I let them see that I'm not invincible, they'll lose confidence. And in my world, confidence is everything. The moment people think you're weak, they start circling, looking for vulnerabilities, opportunities to take what you've built. That sounds exhausting. It is. She looked up at him, and in the harsh diner lighting, Noah could see the real exhaustion in her face. Not just physical, but soul-deep weariness. I've been doing this for 15 years, Noah. Building my company, proving myself, staying 3 steps ahead of everyone who wants to see me fail. And I'm good at it. But tonight, standing in that ballroom with Gregory, making his snide comments, and everyone whispering about us, I couldn't do it anymore. The waitress returned with their pie, setting the plates down with practiced efficiency. Elena picked up her fork but didn't eat, just stared at the cherry filling like it held answers she couldn't find. Do you want to know the truth? She said quietly. When I got shot, when I was lying there bleeding and thinking I was going to die, my first thought wasn't about my company or my legacy or anything I'd built. It was, this is it? This is all my life amounted to? Noah said nothing, just listened. He recognized that tone. He'd used it himself late at night when the walls closed in and the ghosts got too loud. I've achieved everything I set out to achieve, Elena continued. Fortune 500 companies seeking my advice, speaking invitations from Harvard and Stanford, my face on magazine covers. But I don't have anyone who actually knows me. No family except a mother I haven't spoken to in 5 years. No real friends, just business associates and networking contacts. And certainly no one who would sit with me in a crappy diner at 11 p.m. eating pie. You have that now, Noah said. Elena's eyes met his, searching. Do I? Yeah, you do. Something vulnerable flickered across her face. Why? Why do you even want to be my friend, Noah? I'm demanding and stubborn, and I come with an entire circus of complications. You could have walked away after that first conversation at the coffee shop. You should have. Noah considered the question seriously. Why had he let Elena into his carefully controlled life? Why had he agreed to dinner, to texts, to tonight's disaster of a gala? The easy answer was that she hadn't given him a choice, had been persistent and relentless until his defenses crumbled, but that wasn't the whole truth. Because you're real, he said finally. Everyone else in my life, they're kind, they're nice, but they keep me at arm's length. They see the uniform, or the single dad, or the guy with obvious trauma, and they're careful around me. They treat me like I might break. But you? You argue with me. You push back. You don't treat me like I'm fragile. You're not fragile. Exactly. But it took someone as stubborn as you to actually see that. Noah picked at his pie crust. And maybe I'm tired of being alone too. Maybe Sophie was right, and I do need more friends, even ones who drag me to fancy galas and cause scenes with board members. Elena laughed, the sound surprised and genuine. Gregory deserved it. He's always been insufferable. He seemed like a real treat. He's been trying to undermine me for years. Thinks women don't belong in venture capital, though he'd never say it out loud. She finally took a bite of her pie, made a face. This is terrible. I know, but isn't it kind of perfect? It really is. Elena ate another bite, then set down her fork. Noah, I need to tell you something. That photographer in the parking lot, I saw him. He got pictures of us leaving together. Noah felt his stomach drop. And by tomorrow morning, those pictures will be everywhere. Social media, gossip sites, business journals. People are going to make assumptions about us, about our relationship. There will be speculation and rumors and probably some very inventive theories. She looked worried now, guilty. I've dragged you into my world without your permission. If you want to distance yourself, I'll understand. I'll make a statement, clarify that we're just friends, do whatever I can to protect your privacy. Noah thought about Sophie, about the reporters who might show up at her school or his apartment, about the attention he'd spent 4 years avoiding suddenly crashing down on his quiet life. It should terrify him. It should make him want to run. But when he looked at Elena, at the genuine concern in her eyes, the way she was already trying to fix a problem that hadn't fully materialized yet, he realized something. He was tired of running, tired of hiding, tired of letting fear make his decisions. Let them speculate, Noah said. We know the truth. That's enough. You might lose your job. The hospital might not want the attention. Then I'll find another job. Noah, Elena. He reached across the table and covered her hand with his. Stop trying to protect me. Stop trying to control every outcome. Sometimes you just have to let things happen and deal with them as they come. She stared at their hands, at the contrast between his calloused fingers and her manicured nails. I don't know how to do that. Not control things, I mean. It's how I've survived. I know, but maybe you don't have to survive anymore. Maybe you can just live. Elena's eyes were suspiciously bright. She blinked rapidly, cleared her throat. This pie is definitely making me emotional. It's that bad. Absolutely the pie's fault. They sat in that booth for another hour, talking about nothing and everything. Elena told him about growing up poor in Portland, about working 3 jobs to put herself through community college before transferring to a state school, about the professor who'd seen something in her and pushed her toward business school, about building her company from nothing, one investment at a time, one success at a time, until suddenly she was someone people listened to. Noah told her about his childhood in small-town Texas, about joining the army because college seemed impossible and he needed direction, about falling in love with Maria at a friend's barbecue, about how she'd laughed at all his terrible jokes and somehow convinced him he was worth loving, about Sophie being born, about those perfect 2 years before deployment, before everything changed. The waitress refilled their coffee 3 times. Other customers came and went. Outside, the city shifted from late evening to deep night, the streetlights casting orange pools on empty sidewalks. I should get home, Noah said finally, checking his phone. Midnight. Mrs. Chen had texted twice, once to say Sophie was asleep, once to say, don't worry about hurrying back. I should too. Elena pulled out her wallet, but Noah waved her off. I've got it. Noah, you can't afford... I can afford terrible diner pie. He left cash on the table, enough to cover the bill and a generous tip. Besides, you bought dinner last time. They walked back to the hospital parking lot in comfortable silence. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of rain that would probably start falling before morning. Elena had her heels dangling from one hand, her expensive gown trailing slightly on the sidewalk, and she looked more relaxed than Noah had ever seen her. Thank you, she said when they reached her car, a sleek black sedan that probably cost more than Noah would make in 5 years. For tonight, for the diner, for not running away screaming when I brought you into my disaster of a world. Your world's not that bad, just complicated. That's a diplomatic way of putting it. Elena unlocked her car but didn't get in. Noah, can I ask you something? Sure. What happened tonight, leaving the gala, the pie, all of it? Was that weird for you, being spontaneous like that? Noah considered. Terrifying, actually. My whole life is scheduled and controlled and predictable. I know exactly what every day will look like. Spontaneity means variables I can't plan for. But you did it anyway. I did it anyway. Noah smiled slightly. Maybe I'm trying to learn to live too. Elena stepped forward and hugged him. It surprised Noah. She'd never initiated physical contact before, but after a moment, he hugged her back. She was warm and solid against him, and when she finally stepped away, her eyes were definitely wet. Text me when you get home, Noah said, so I know you're safe. I was going to say the same thing to you. We're both control freaks. It's perfect. Elena laughed. Good night, Noah. Good night, Elena. He waited until she was in her car, engine running, before walking to his own vehicle. His phone buzzed as he unlocked the door, Elena's text already coming through. Leaving now? Tonight was perfect. Thank you for being my friend. Noah typed back as he settled into the driver's seat. Anytime, even for terrible galas and worse pie. The drive home took 20 minutes, the streets mostly empty. Noah's mind kept replaying the evening, not the gala and Gregory's sneering judgment, but the diner booth and Elena's confession, the way she'd looked when he'd told her she could just live instead of survive. Mrs. Chen was dozing on his couch when he let himself into the apartment, a Korean drama playing softly on the TV. She woke with a start, smiled when she saw him. Good evening, she asked in her heavily accented English. Interesting evening, Noah corrected. How was Sophie? Perfect child, ate cookies, brushed teeth, read 3 stories, asleep by 9:30. Mrs. Chen stood, gathering her knitting. You look happy, different happy. Just tired. Tired, happy, different happy. She patted his cheek. Good for you. You need happy. After Mrs. Chen left, Noah checked on Sophie. She was sprawled across her twin bed, one arm hanging off the side, her favorite stuffed turtle clutched in the other hand. Her nightlight, shaped like a moon, cast soft silver light across her peaceful face. Noah straightened her blankets, kissed her forehead, and stood watching her for a long moment. This was what mattered, not gossip or speculation or photographs, just Sophie, safe and happy and dreaming of turtles and space. But when Noah finally crawled into his own bed, he found himself thinking about Elena too, about the loneliness in her eyes when she'd talked about her empty life, about how she'd looked in that diner booth with terrible pie and a genuine smile. His phone buzzed. Another text from Elena. Home safe. Thank you again. P.S. I may have ordered us better pie for next time, from an actual bakery. Noah smiled in the darkness and typed back. Looking forward to it. Sleep well. The storm that Noah had been bracing for hit Sunday morning, but not in the way he'd expected. He woke to 17 missed calls, 43 text messages, and his phone buzzing continuously with notifications. Disoriented, still half asleep, Noah grabbed the phone and immediately wished he hadn't. The photos were everywhere. Hashtag Elena Rourke. Mystery Man was trending on 3 different platforms. Business Insider had run a piece titled, Who is Elena Rourke's Hospital Hero? Forbes had published a follow-up to their previous profile with new speculation about her personal life. Local news sites had picked up the story, and someone had found his military service record and was sharing that too. But the worst was the photo itself. Noah and Elena leaving the hospital, hands linked, both of them smiling like they'd just escaped prison. In the camera's lens, they looked intimate, conspiratorial, like more than friends. Daddy? Sophie's voice came from his bedroom doorway. Why is your phone making so much noise? Noah silenced the notifications. Just some work stuff, sweetheart. Nothing important. But it was important, and by Monday morning, it became impossible to ignore. Noah's supervisor called him at 6 a.m. before his shift even started, asking him to come in immediately. The hospital's parking lot had reporters. His apartment building had reporters. Someone had tracked down Mrs. Chen and offered her money for insider information about Noah Briggs and Elena Rourke's secret romance. Mrs. Chen, bless her, had told them exactly where they could put their money and slammed the door in their faces. Noah called Elena on his way to the hospital meeting. She answered on the first ring. I'm so sorry, she said immediately. This is my fault. I should have been more careful, should have thought about... Elena, breathe. It's okay. It's not okay. Have you seen what they're saying? Some sites are claiming we're engaged. Others are suggesting I hired you as my bodyguard and things got complicated. It's absurd. It is absurd. So we ignore it. We can't just ignore it. Your job, I'll handle my job. You handle your company. We'll figure the rest out. But handling his job turned out to be more complicated than Noah had anticipated. Administrator Walsh's office felt different this time. Less welcoming, more formal. Janet Walsh sat behind her desk with the hospital's legal counsel beside her, both wearing expressions that made Noah's stomach sink. Mr. Briggs, Walsh began, her tone carefully neutral. Thank you for coming in. I'm sure you're aware of the media attention surrounding you and Miss Rourke. I am. The hospital has received numerous inquiries from journalists, from board members, from donors. They're asking about your relationship with Ms. Rourke, about what happened the night she was brought in, about hospital protocols and conflicts of interest. Noah felt anger spark in his chest. There's no conflict of interest. I did my job that night. Elena Rourke is my friend. That's all there is to say. The legal counsel, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses, leaned forward. Mr. Briggs, we're not suggesting any impropriety, but you must understand that the hospital has to protect its reputation. This level of media scrutiny could reflect poorly on St. Meridian. So, what are you saying? Walsh looked genuinely apologetic. "We're placing you on temporary administrative leave, paid leave," she added quickly, "until the media attention dies down. It's standard protocol for situations like this." Situations like this. Noah heard his voice go flat, distant. Situations where I did nothing wrong except save someone's life and become her friend. "Noah," Walsh said, and there was real sympathy in her eyes. "I understand this isn't fair. But right now we have reporters harassing our staff, camping outside our entrances, disrupting hospital operations. We need time for things to calm down." "And if they don't calm down?" Nobody answered that question. Noah left the hospital in a daze. His phone was buzzing again, Elena calling, probably having heard somehow. He ignored it, drove aimlessly for 20 minutes, then found himself pulling into the parking lot of Sophie's school. It was early, drop-off wouldn't happen for another hour, but Noah sat in his car and tried to process what had just happened. He'd been put on leave. Not fired, not yet, but the message was clear. His association with Elena Rourke had made him a liability. He should be angry, should feel betrayed. Instead, he just felt tired. His phone rang again. This time it was a number he recognized. Robert Chen, Elena's attorney. "Mr. Briggs, I'm calling on behalf of Ms. Rourke. She's asked me to extend an offer. I don't want her money." "It's not money, it's a position. Ms. Rourke is establishing a new initiative, the Rourke Emergency Response Program. It would train ordinary citizens in basic life-saving techniques. She wants you to help design the curriculum." Noah closed his eyes. She shouldn't do this because she feels guilty. She's not doing it because she feels guilty. She's doing it because 3 weeks ago, a trained professional saved her life, and it made her realize how many people die every year because bystanders don't know what to do. This could save lives, Mr. Briggs. Real, measurable impact. I can't take a job from her. Not now. Not with all this attention. Then don't take a job. Consult. Part-time. On your schedule. Working from wherever you want. She's not trying to fix your life, Mr. Briggs. She's trying to use what happened to her for something good. After Robert hung up, Noah sat in his car for a long time, watching parents start to arrive for drop-off, watching Sophie's classmates tumble out of minivans and sedans with their backpacks and lunchboxes and uncomplicated lives. His phone buzzed. A text from Elena. "I heard about the hospital. I'm sorry, but this is temporary. They can't keep you on leave forever." "And Noah? The program is real. It's not about us. It's about making sure what you did for me, someone else can do for anyone. Think about it." Noah picked up Sophie from Mrs. Chen's apartment and tried to act normal. They went to the park, fed the ducks, ate ice cream that dripped down their fingers. Sophie chattered about school and her friends, and didn't seem to notice that Daddy was quieter than usual. But that evening, after Sophie was in bed, Noah's phone rang. His supervisor, voice apologetic but firm, explained that the administrative leave was being extended indefinitely. The hospital board had met. The decision was final. Noah could collect his things from his locker whenever he wanted. He was being fired. They just weren't calling it that. Noah hung up and sat on his couch in the dark apartment, staring at nothing. 4 years. 4 years of reliable paychecks and steady work and a life that made sense. Gone because he'd done the right thing and made a friend who came with too many complications. The anger came then, hot and sharp. He grabbed his phone, pulled up Elena's number, typed out a message he knew he'd regret. "You were right. This is all your fault. You've destroyed my life." His finger hovered over send for a long moment. Then he deleted it and typed something else instead. "Lost my job. Need time to think. Talk later." Elena's response came within seconds. "I'm coming over." "No, I need space." "Noah, please. Let me help." "You've helped enough." He turned off his phone and threw it across the room. The following days blurred together in a haze of anger and frustration and bills that suddenly seemed insurmountable. Noah's savings would cover maybe 2 months of rent and expenses. After that, he'd have to find something, anything, that would pay enough to keep Sophie fed and housed. He avoided Elena's calls, ignored her texts, pretended the envelope that arrived from her attorney, containing a formal offer for the consultant position, didn't exist on his kitchen counter. Mrs. Chen worried. Sophie worried. Even Marcus, who'd somehow gotten Noah's number, called to check in. But Noah couldn't face any of them. Couldn't face the fact that he'd let his guard down, let someone in, and it had cost him everything he'd built. A week after losing his job, Noah was researching security positions in other cities, maybe somewhere quieter, somewhere no one knew his name, when someone knocked on his door. Persistent rhythmic knocking that wouldn't stop. He opened the door, ready to tell whatever reporter had found him to leave him alone. Elena Rourke stood in his hallway, wearing jeans and a t-shirt, her hair in a messy ponytail, looking absolutely furious. "You don't get to shut me out," she said, pushing past him into the apartment. "You're angry. I understand that. You have every right to be angry. But you don't get to ghost your friend when things get hard." "Friend?" Noah heard the bitterness in his voice. "Friends don't destroy each other's lives." "I didn't destroy anything. A bunch of gossip-hungry parasites with cameras did that, and a hospital administration more concerned with optics than with standing behind a good employee. It doesn't matter who's at fault. The result is the same. I don't have a job, I can't pay my rent, and my daughter's stability, the one thing I've been trying to maintain, is falling apart." Elena flinched. "So take the consultant position." "I don't want your charity. It's not charity." Elena's voice rose to match his. "It's a legitimate position doing real work that could save real lives, but you're so determined to be a martyr, so convinced you deserve to suffer, that you'd rather let Sophie lose her home than accept help from someone who cares about you." The words hit like a slap. Noah stepped back, breathing hard. "You want to know what I think?" Elena continued, her voice shaking now. "I think you're scared. I think you've spent 4 years punishing yourself for losing those soldiers, for losing your wife, for every bad thing that's ever happened. And now something good is happening. Friendship, opportunity, a chance to use your skills again. And it terrifies you. Because if you admit you deserve good things, you might have to stop being angry. You might have to forgive yourself." "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" Elena took a step toward him. "Noah, I see you. I see how you isolate yourself, how you work a job that wastes your talents, how you've convinced yourself that you're just a security guard when you're so much more than that. And I know why you do it, because it's safe. Because if you never try, you can never fail again." Noah wanted to argue, wanted to rage at her, but the words wouldn't come, because she was right. About all of it. "I'm tired," he said finally, all the fight draining out of him. "I'm so tired, Elena. I lost everything once. I don't think I could survive losing everything again." Elena's anger melted into something softer. She closed the distance between them, took his hands in hers. "Then don't face it alone. Let me help. Not because you're charity, not because I feel guilty, but because that's what friends do. They show up. They help carry the weight." Noah looked at their joined hands. "I don't know how to do this. How to accept help. How to trust that it won't all fall apart." "Neither do I. But we can figure it out together." Elena squeezed his hands gently. "Take the consulting position. Part-time, flexible hours, working from home when Sophie needs you. Help me build something that matters. And if the media circus continues, we'll face it together. I promise, I won't let you fall." Sophie's door creaked open. She stood there in her pajamas, rubbing sleep from her eyes, her turtle clutched under one arm. "Elena?" Sophie's voice was small, confused. "Why are you here? Are you and Daddy fighting?" Elena let go of Noah's hands and knelt down to Sophie's level. "We were having a disagreement, but it's okay. Sometimes friends disagree. Are you still friends?" Elena looked up at Noah, the question in her eyes genuine. Noah thought about the past week, about his anger and fear and stubborn pride, about how Elena had shown up anyway, had pushed back against his walls with the same relentless determination she brought to everything. "Yeah," Noah said quietly. "We're still friends." Sophie's face lit up. "Good, because Daddy needs friends, and you're one of the good ones." Elena's eyes were bright as she stood up. "Thank you, Sophie. You're one of the good ones, too." After Sophie went back to bed, Noah and Elena sat on his worn couch in the dim living room. The city hummed outside the windows, life continuing whether they were ready or not. "I'll take the position," Noah said, "but on my terms. Part-time, like Robert said, and I designed the curriculum my way based on what actually works in emergency situations." "Agreed." And we set boundaries. When the media gets too invasive, when photographers show up at Sophie's school or reporters harass Mrs. Chen, we shut it down. Whatever it takes. Done. And Elena? Noah looked at her directly. Thank you for not giving up on me even when I pushed you away. That's what friends do, Elena said softly. They stay. They sat in comfortable silence for a while longer until Elena finally stood to leave. At the door, she paused. Noah? That thing I said about you being scared of good things? I was talking about myself too. I've spent 15 years afraid that if I stopped fighting, stopped controlling everything, it would all disappear. But sitting in that diner with you, leaving the gala, coming here tonight, those are the first real moments I've had in years. So thank you for teaching me how to live instead of just survive. After she left, Noah stood at his window watching her car pull away into the Seattle night. His phone, which he'd finally turned back on, buzzed with messages. Job offers from people who'd heard he was available. Interview requests from journalists who wanted his side of the story. And one message from Administrator Walsh. The board is reconsidering. Call me. But Noah deleted them all except one. Elena's text sent just moments ago. See you next week, partner. Time to build something that matters. Noah saved it, then pulled out the envelope from her attorney that had been sitting on his counter for a week. Inside was a contract, a blueprint for the Emergency Response Initiative, and a handwritten note from Elena. You saved my life. Now help me save others. Not because you owe me, but because this is who you are. Someone who shows up when people need help. Let yourself be that person again. Noah read it 3 times, then carefully set it aside and went to check on Sophie one more time before bed. She was fast asleep, her turtle tucked close, dreams of space and underwater creatures playing behind her closed eyes. Tomorrow, Noah would sign the contract. Tomorrow, he'd start building something new. Tomorrow, he'd take the first real step toward the life that Sophie's drawing promised. The one where Daddy was a hero again, not because of what he'd lost, but because of what he chose to give. But tonight, he just stood in his daughter's doorway and let himself feel something he hadn't felt in 4 years. Hope. The contract sat on Noah's kitchen table for 2 days before he finally signed it. Not because he was hesitating. For once, he knew exactly what he wanted to do. But because he wanted to read every word, understand every clause, make sure he wasn't walking into something that would swallow him whole. Elena had been right about one thing. He was scared. But being scared and being paralyzed weren't the same thing, and Noah was done letting fear make his decisions. He signed on Wednesday morning, scanned the pages with his phone, and emailed them to Robert Chen before he could second-guess himself. The reply came within minutes. Welcome aboard. Elena wants to meet Thursday at 10 a.m. to discuss the program framework. Location TBD, somewhere without reporters. They settled on Elena's penthouse. Noah had never seen where she lived, had imagined something cold and minimalist, all glass and steel and expensive furniture that no one actually sat on. But when he arrived Thursday morning, Sophie safely at school, Mrs. Chen on standby for pickup, he found something entirely different. The penthouse occupied the top 2 floors of a building overlooking Elliott Bay, with floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the water like a painting. But inside, it was warm. Lived in. Books everywhere, piled on tables, stacked on the floor, filling built-in shelves that covered entire walls. A blanket draped over the couch, coffee mugs on the counter, pictures scattered across the mantel, though Noah couldn't see them clearly from the entrance. Elena answered the door in yoga pants and an oversized sweater, her hair pulled back, no makeup, looking more like a graduate student than a billionaire CEO. Come in. Fair warning, I stress clean, so if things look chaotic, it's because I've been anxious about this meeting all week. You were anxious? Terrified. Elena closed the door behind him. What if you changed your mind? What if I push too hard again? What if this whole thing is a terrible idea that falls apart spectacularly? She led him into the living room where a coffee table was covered with papers, blueprints, research articles. Coffee? I have the good stuff now, not terrible diner coffee, actual imported beans that cost more than they should. Coffee sounds great. While Elena disappeared into the kitchen, Noah examined the papers on the table. Training modules, medical supply lists, projected budgets. She'd been working on this for weeks, he realized, long before he'd agreed, long before she'd known if he'd even say yes. Elena returned with 2 mugs and handed one to him. I may have gotten ahead of myself, but I wanted to show you I was serious, that this isn't some vanity project or guilt offering. This is real work that could save real lives. Noah sat down on the couch, which was comfortable and worn in, clearly actually used, and picked up one of the training modules. You've outlined a comprehensive program here: basic CPR, wound management, shock recognition, emergency response protocols. This is good, Elena. Really good. But it's missing something. Noah set down the paper and looked at her. The psychological component. Knowing what to do isn't enough. People freeze in emergencies. They panic. They convince themselves someone else will help, that they're not qualified, that they'll make things worse. You need to train people to overcome that fear. Elena sat down next to him, close enough that he could smell her coffee, vanilla and cinnamon. How do you train for that? Scenarios, simulations. Create situations that feel real enough to trigger that fight or flight response, then teach people to push through it. Because the difference between someone dying and someone surviving often comes down to whether a bystander can act in those first crucial minutes. Like you did, when you helped me. I had training, and honestly, I still almost froze, because it had been 4 years since I'd done field work, and every instinct was screaming at me to let someone else handle it. Noah met her eyes. But I thought about Sophie, about what I'd want someone to do if she was bleeding out in an ER, and that got me moving. Elena was quiet for a moment, absorbing this. Then she picked up a pen and started writing notes in the margins of her documents. Personal stakes. Connection to the victim as a human being, not just a medical emergency. We need to build that into the training. They worked for 3 hours straight, coffee turning cold and forgotten as they designed curriculum, argued about approaches, built something that was equal parts Noah's field experience and Elena's organizational genius. She challenged his assumptions about what ordinary people could learn. He pushed back on her timelines, insisting that rushing training would make it worthless. It felt natural, easy, like they'd been doing this for years instead of weeks. Around 1 p.m., Elena's stomach growled loudly enough for Noah to hear. She pressed her hand to her abdomen, embarrassed. Sorry, I may have forgotten to eat breakfast. You forgot to eat? I was nervous. I don't eat when I'm nervous. She stood up, wincing slightly as the movement pulled at her still healing wound. There's a Thai place downstairs that delivers. Unless you need to. I've got time until Sophie's pickup. Thai sounds good. Over pad Thai and spring rolls eaten straight from the containers, Elena had real dishes but declared them too much effort. They talked about logistics, where to host training sessions, how to recruit volunteers, whether to partner with hospitals or fire departments or create something independent. The hospital board reached out, Elena said between bites. They want to be involved, want to host sessions at St. Meridian, use it as a community outreach initiative. Noah's expression darkened. The same hospital that put me on leave? The same hospital that's now deeply embarrassed about that decision. Elena set down her chopsticks. Administrator Walsh called me personally. Apparently several board members resigned after the media backlash. The new board wants to make amends. By using our program as a publicity stunt. By actually supporting something worthwhile. Noah, I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But we need hospital partnerships to make this work. Access to their facilities, their medical staff as backup instructors, their credibility in the community. Noah wanted to refuse on principle, wanted to tell St. Meridian to take their belated support and shove it. But Elena was right. Personal feelings didn't matter as much as building something effective. Fine, he said, but I wanted in writing that this program is independent. They can host us, but they don't control curriculum or decision-making. Already in the contract I'm negotiating, Elena smiled slightly. I learned from the best to get things in writing. Who's the best? You. When you read my consultant agreement so carefully, you found 3 typos and a clause that needed clarification. They spent the afternoon refining their plans, and by the time Noah needed to leave for Sophie's pickup, they had a framework solid enough to present to potential partners. Elena walked him to the door, and Noah noticed what he hadn't earlier. The photographs on the mantel were of her as a child. A young girl with serious eyes standing next to a woman who must have been her mother. Both of them looked guarded, careful, like they were used to disappointment. "That's the last picture we took together," Elena said, noticing his gaze. "I was 14. She didn't approve of my college choices, my career, my life. Said I was betraying my roots by wanting more than she had. I'm sorry. Don't be. She was wrong. Wanting more isn't betrayal, it's survival." Elena opened the door. "Same time next week? We should start recruiting instructors." Same time works. Noah made it to Sophie's school with minutes to spare. She burst out of the building with her usual enthusiasm, backpack bouncing, talking before she even reached the car. "Daddy, guess what? We learned about Rosa Parks today, and she was so brave, and Mrs. Rodriguez says being brave means doing the right thing, even when it's scary, and I told her you're brave like that, and she wants you to come for career day next month." Noah helped Sophie into her booster seat, his mind still partially on training modules and hospital partnerships. "Career day? Sweetheart, I don't know if—" "Please, Daddy. Everyone else's parents are coming. Zoe's dad, before he moves, is coming to talk about being a pilot, and Mia's mom is talking about being a dentist, and I want to tell everyone about you saving people." Noah's chest tightened. "Sophie, I don't save people anymore. Not really." Sophie's expression turned serious. That look she got when she was about to say something wise beyond her years. "But you're helping Elena teach other people to save people. Mrs. Chen told me. She says you're building something important." Of course, Mrs. Chen knew. Mrs. Chen knew everything that happened in their lives, had probably heard it from the neighbor who'd seen Elena visiting, who told another neighbor, who told Mrs. Chen over their weekly mahjong game. "I'm working on something new," Noah admitted. "With Elena, a training program to teach regular people how to help in emergencies." "See? That's saving people, just in a different way." Sophie buckled herself in with practiced ease. "So will you come to career day, please?" Noah looked at his daughter in the rearview mirror, her hopeful eyes, her absolute faith that he was someone worth bragging about. "Yeah, sweetheart, I'll come." The following weeks blurred into a controlled chaos that was both exhausting and exhilarating. Noah and Elena met 3 times a week, building curriculum, recruiting instructors, navigating the politics of hospital partnerships and insurance requirements. Marcus agreed to help with security logistics. Mrs. Chen volunteered to coordinate scheduling. Even Robert Chen got involved, handling the legal framework. But it was Noah and Elena at the center of it all, their different strengths creating something neither could have built alone. Noah brought practical experience and an understanding of how people actually responded under pressure. Elena brought organizational skill and the ability to cut through bureaucracy that would have stalled Noah for months. They argued constantly about teaching methods, about pacing, about whether to accept corporate sponsorship. But the arguments were productive, pushing them both toward better solutions. And afterward, they'd order takeout and sit on Elena's couch, reviewing their progress, finding unexpected common ground. The media attention faded gradually as the weeks passed. When Noah and Elena were photographed together at a hospital meeting, the headline read, "Rourke Emergency Response Initiative Takes Shape," instead of speculation about romance. When a reporter finally cornered Noah outside Sophie's school, he gave a brief statement about the program and nothing more, and the reporter actually printed it accurately. Slowly, carefully, Noah's life started to resemble something normal again. Better than normal, purposeful. 2 months after signing the contract, they held their first training session. 20 volunteers packed into a conference room at St. Meridian, ranging from college students to retirees, all united by a desire to learn how to help. Noah stood at the front of the room with Elena beside him and felt his hands start to shake. Elena noticed immediately, touched his elbow gently. "You've got this," she whispered. "They're here because of you, because of what you did for me. Show them how." Noah took a breath, looked at the faces watching him expectantly, and began. 4 years ago, I was a combat medic in Afghanistan. I was trained to save lives under the worst possible conditions. But the truth is, most emergencies don't happen in war zones. They happen in parking lots, and living rooms, and grocery stores. And the person who can make the difference between life and death isn't always a trained professional. Sometimes it's just whoever happens to be there. He told them about Elena, about seeing the blood, about the moment of hesitation before training overrode fear, about how those first few minutes of pressure on her wound had been the difference between her surviving long enough for surgery and bleeding out in a waiting room. "I'm going to teach you what I know," Noah continued, "but more importantly, I'm going to teach you to overcome the fear that makes people stand frozen while someone dies. Because knowing what to do isn't enough. You have to be able to act." The session ran 3 hours. They practiced CPR on mannequins, learned to pack wounds with improvised materials, role-played scenarios where volunteers had to make split-second decisions. Noah watched people fumble at first, then gradually gain confidence, their hands steadier with each repetition. Elena observed from the back of the room, taking notes, occasionally jumping in with logistical questions. But mostly she just watched Noah teach, and when their eyes met across the room, her pride was obvious. After the last volunteer left, Noah and Elena collapsed into chairs, exhausted but satisfied. "That was incredible," Elena said. "You were incredible. The way you explained things, the way you made them feel capable. Noah, this is going to work. This is actually going to save lives." It was one session. It was the first session, and it was perfect. She pulled out her phone, showed him a message. "We already have 50 more people signed up for next month's training, and 3 other hospitals want to host sessions." Noah stared at the screen. 50 people? Word spreads fast when something matters. Elena put her phone away. "Noah, I know I keep saying this, but thank you for taking a chance on this, for taking a chance on me. You made it pretty hard to say no." "I'm persistent. It's been mentioned before." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the conference room quiet around them, the ghost of 20 volunteers' energy still lingering in the air. "Elena," Noah said quietly, "I need to tell you something." She looked at him, curious and slightly worried. "What?" "When I first met you, when you were bleeding and scared and whispering about wanting it to be fast, I almost walked away. I almost let someone else handle it because I was terrified of failing again, of having someone die in my hands and adding their name to the list of people I couldn't save." Elena's expression softened. "But you didn't walk away." "No. But I've spent the last 3 months wondering why. Why I helped you when I'd spent 4 years avoiding exactly that kind of responsibility." Noah met her eyes. "And I think I finally figured it out. Tell me." "Because you looked at me and saw someone who could help. Not someone broken or traumatized or damaged, just someone capable. And that made me want to be that person again." Noah's voice caught slightly. "You gave me permission to stop punishing myself." Elena reached across the space between their chairs and took his hand. "You gave yourself permission. I just happened to be there when you finally decided to forgive yourself." "I'm not sure I'm there yet, forgiving myself, I mean. That's okay. It's a process." She squeezed his hand gently. "But Noah, those soldiers you lost in Afghanistan, Tyler and the others, you didn't fail them. You fought for them. You did everything you could, and sometimes that's not enough, and that's tragic, but it's not your fault." Noah felt something crack inside his chest, not breaking, but opening. 4 years of guilt and grief that he'd been carrying alone suddenly felt lighter with someone else acknowledging it, validating it, telling him he was allowed to set it down. "Thank you," he whispered. They sat holding hands in that conference room for a long time, until the janitor came by to clean and politely asked if they were planning to stay all night. Over the next 6 months, the Rourke Emergency Response Initiative grew beyond anything Noah had imagined. They trained 200 volunteers, then 500, then 1,000. Stories started coming in. A man who'd used their CPR training to save his neighbor, a woman who'd stopped her coworker's bleeding after a kitchen accident, a teenager who'd helped a stranger having a seizure until paramedics arrived. Each story felt like redemption, like proof that what Noah had survived, the war, the losses, the long darkness afterward, had led to something meaningful. Elena threw herself into the work with characteristic intensity, but Noah noticed changes in her too. She smiled more, laughed easier, took Sundays off to have brunch with Noah and Sophie, the 3 of them developing their own weird traditions, terrible diners, competitive mini-golf, whatever new restaurant Sophie wanted to try. Sophie adored Elena, and Elena clearly adored Sophie right back. She showed up to Sophie's school play and sat in the front row. She helped with homework when Noah was overwhelmed. She even learned to braid hair, badly, but Sophie appreciated the effort. "Is Elena going to be my mom?" Sophie asked one night as Noah tucked her into bed. The question startled him. "What?" "No, sweetheart, Elena is our friend." "But she's always here, and she makes you happy, and she braids my hair." Friends can do all those things without being more than friends. Sophie considered this seriously. "Okay, but Daddy, if she wanted to be more than friends, that would be okay with me." After Sophie fell asleep, Noah stood in her doorway for a long time, thinking about her words. The truth was more complicated than he could explain to a 6-year-old. Yes, Elena made him happy. Yes, she'd become essential to his life in ways he hadn't anticipated. But romance felt impossible, too risky, too complicated, built on a foundation of trauma and gratitude that seemed like shaky ground for anything more. Besides, Elena had never indicated she wanted more. She'd asked for friendship, and he'd given it. That seemed like enough. But 2 weeks before the 1-year anniversary of the night Noah had saved Elena's life, something changed. They were at Elena's penthouse, planning a celebration event. They'd decided to turn the anniversary into a fundraiser for expanding the program nationally. Sophie was with Mrs. Chen for the evening, giving Noah rare adult time that usually meant he and Elena could work late without interruption. Elena had ordered pizza, their usual Thursday night routine, and they were sitting on her couch reviewing donor lists when she suddenly set down her papers. "Noah, can I ask you something personal?" He looked up from his laptop. "Sure. Do you ever think about dating again? Moving on from Maria?" The question caught him completely off guard. Where's this coming from?" "I've been thinking about my life, about how I've spent 15 years married to my work, convincing myself that was enough. And then I met you and Sophie, and I realized what I've been missing." Elena tucked her legs under her, looking unusually vulnerable. "I'm 43 years old, Noah. I always thought I had time to figure out the personal stuff later. But lately I wonder if later is now. If I'm going to have any kind of life outside my company, I need to start building it." Noah closed his laptop, giving her his full attention. "Are you saying you want to start dating?" "I'm saying I want to try, to be open to the possibility of connection beyond friendship." She paused, then added quietly, "Robert set me up with someone, a colleague from another firm. We're having dinner next week." Something twisted in Noah's chest, sharp and unexpected. He had no right to feel this way. Elena was his friend. She deserved happiness, deserved someone who could offer her the kind of relationship she wanted. But the thought of her sitting across from someone else, sharing her smiles and her stories and her fierce intelligence, made Noah realize something he'd been deliberately not acknowledging. He'd fallen for her. Somewhere between terrible diner pie and training sessions and Sunday brunches with Sophie, he'd fallen completely for Elena Rourke. "That's great," Noah heard himself say. "You deserve to be happy." Elena studied his face with those sharp blue eyes that never missed anything. "Do I?" "Of course you do. Why wouldn't you?" "I don't know. You tell me." Her voice had gone quieter, more careful. "Because the way you just reacted, you looked like I'd hit you." Noah stood up, suddenly needing space between them. "I'm fine, just surprised. But Elena, this is good. You should definitely go on this date." "Noah, I should go. Sophie's probably ready for bed, and I told Mrs. Chen I wouldn't be late." He gathered his laptop and papers with hands that weren't quite steady. "Same time next week?" "Noah, wait." Elena stood too, reached for his arm. "Talk to me, please." There's nothing to talk about. But he couldn't make himself look at her, couldn't risk her seeing the truth written all over his face. "You're lying. You're a terrible liar." Elena moved in front of him, forcing him to meet her eyes. "Tell me what's wrong." "Nothing's wrong. You want to date? You should date. I want you to be happy." But nothing." Noah gently removed her hand from his arm. "I'll see you next week. Good luck with your date." He left before she could push further, drove home in a daze, and spent the rest of the night staring at his ceiling, wondering when exactly he'd become such a coward. The following week was torture. Noah threw himself into work on the program, avoided Elena's calls with excuses about Sophie's school schedule and unexpected meetings. She texted asking if he was okay, if she'd done something wrong, if they could talk. He responded with brief reassurances that everything was fine, he was just busy, nothing was wrong. On Thursday, the night Elena's date was supposed to happen, Noah lay on his couch pretending to watch a movie Sophie had picked out. But his mind was across the city, imagining Elena laughing at someone else's jokes, touching someone else's hand across a dinner table, opening herself to possibilities that didn't include him. His phone rang at 9 p.m. Elena's name flashed on the screen. Noah almost didn't answer, but Sophie, half asleep on the couch next to him, mumbled, "That's Elena. You should answer. She's worried about you." He accepted the call. "Hello?" "I didn't go." Elena's voice was tight, controlled, but emotional. "I canceled the date. I couldn't go because all I could think about was you and how you've been avoiding me all week and how nothing makes sense anymore." Noah sat up carefully, trying not to disturb Sophie. "Elena, I need to say something, and I need you to let me finish before you respond." She took a breath. "For the first time in my adult life, I have something real, something that isn't about business or money or achievement. I have you and Sophie, and it's the most important thing in my world. And I convinced myself that it was enough to just be your friend, that wanting more was selfish, that it would ruin everything we'd built." Noah's heart was hammering. "Elena, I'm not finished. When I told you about the date, you looked devastated, just for a second before you put your walls back up. And I realized that maybe you felt the same way I do. But I need to know, Noah. I need you to tell me the truth, because I can't keep pretending that friendship is enough when what I actually want is everything." The silence stretched between them, loaded with possibility and risk. Sophie had opened her eyes and was watching Noah with that too-knowing expression. "The truth is," Noah said slowly, "I'm terrified. Because the last time I loved someone, I lost her. And the thought of losing you too, of building something real and having it taken away, I don't know if I could survive that again. So you'd rather have nothing? Rather watch me date other people than risk being hurt? I'd rather protect you from all the broken parts of me that haven't healed. You deserve someone whole, Elena, someone who doesn't wake up screaming from nightmares, someone who isn't damaged. Stop." Elena's voice cracked. "Stop deciding what I deserve. I'm a grown woman who's built an empire from nothing. I think I can decide for myself what I want. And what I want is you, Noah Briggs. All of you, the nightmares and the trauma and the beautiful, stubborn, impossible way you love your daughter and help strangers and push yourself to be better even when it terrifies you." Sophie sat up on the couch. "Daddy, is Elena crying?" Noah covered the phone. "Sweetheart, I need a minute. Tell her you love her," Sophie whispered urgently. "Tell her, Daddy. Don't be scared." Noah looked at his daughter, this brave, wise, impossible child who'd somehow learned to see what people needed even when they couldn't see it themselves. Then he uncovered the phone. "Where are you?" he asked Elena. "Home. Why?" "Stay there. I'm coming over." He hung up before she could respond, turned to Sophie. "Can you stay with Mrs. Chen for a bit? I need to—" "Go tell Elena you love her." "Yes, I know. Go." Sophie was already putting on her shoes, her excitement barely contained. "This is so romantic, Daddy, like in movies." Mrs. Chen answered her door with a knowing smile, accepted Sophie without questions, and pushed Noah toward the stairs. "Go. Talk to your girl. Mrs. Chen watched Sophie all night if needed." The drive to Elena's penthouse took 20 minutes that felt like hours. Noah's mind raced with everything he wanted to say, needed to say, had been too afraid to admit for months. The elevator ride to her floor was interminable, and when he finally knocked on her door, his heart was trying to escape his chest. Elena opened it immediately, like she'd been waiting right there. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her hair messy, still wearing the casual clothes she'd put on after canceling her date. "Hi," she said softly. "Hi." Noah stepped inside and Elena closed the door behind him. They stood in her entryway, the city lights glittering through the windows, the weight of everything unsaid hanging between them. "I'm not good with words," Noah started. "I'm better with actions. But you need words right now, so I'm going to try." Elena nodded, waiting. When Maria died, I thought I was done, that I'd had my chance at love and lost it, and that was it for me. I'd raise Sophie and build a small, safe life, and that would be enough. Noah took a breath. And then I met you. And you were relentless and stubborn, and you wouldn't leave me alone even when I desperately wanted you to. And somewhere between terrible pie and Sunday brunches and building this program together, I fell in love with you. Elena's breath caught. I'm still broken in some ways, Noah continued. I still have nightmares. I still have days where the weight of what I've lost feels crushing. But with you, when I'm with you, I feel like maybe I could be whole again. Like maybe loving someone again doesn't mean betraying the people I've lost. It just means living. Tears were streaming down Elena's face now. Noah, I'm scared, he admitted. Terrified, actually. But I'm more scared of watching you build a life with someone else. Of wondering what could have happened if I'd just been brave enough to try. Elena closed the distance between them, her hands coming up to frame his face. You're the bravest person I know. You saved my life when I'd given up. You built something meaningful from nothing. You raised a perfect daughter alone while fighting demons most people couldn't imagine. How is this any different? Because if I lose you, you won't. She said it with absolute certainty. Noah, I'm not going anywhere. I'm too stubborn to leave, remember? You're stuck with me now. Noah laughed, surprised and relieved and overwhelmed. Yeah? Yeah. Elena smiled through her tears. I love you. I've loved you for months. And I'm done pretending otherwise. Sophie said to tell you I love you, Noah said, which wasn't exactly romantic, but made Elena laugh. Of course she did. That child is wiser than both of us combined. She really is. And then Noah was kissing her, finally kissing her, and it felt like coming home after years of wandering. Elena kissed him back with everything she had. Months of wanting and waiting and hoping poured into this one perfect moment. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Elena rested her forehead against his. So what happens now? She whispered. Now? Noah smiled. Now we figure it out together. No more hiding, no more pretending, just us. I like the sound of that. They spent the rest of the evening on her couch, talking through everything they'd been too afraid to say. Noah told her about the nightmares, about the therapy he'd started 6 months ago, about the slow work of healing. Elena told him about her fears of not being enough, of being too much, of not knowing how to be in a relationship when she'd spent so long alone. We'll learn together, Noah promised. We'll probably mess up sometimes, but we'll figure it out. Together, Elena agreed. Noah picked up Sophie around midnight. Mrs. Chen opened her door with Sophie fast asleep on the couch, clutching her turtle. Good talk with Elena? Mrs. Chen asked quietly. Very good talk. Mrs. Chen knows these things. You two belong together. Now go, before you wake the child. Sophie stirred when Noah lifted her, blinked up at him sleepily. Did you tell her? I told her, sweetheart. Good. I was right, wasn't I? She was the good kind of friend. The very best kind. The 1-year anniversary celebration happened 3 months later. What had started as a simple fundraiser evolved into something much bigger, a grand opening for the newly established Briggs Center for Community Response, a dedicated training facility funded by Elena's foundation and named despite Noah's protests. It's your program, Elena had insisted during one of their many arguments about the name. Your vision, your expertise, your heart, it should bear your name. It's our program, Noah had countered. I couldn't have built this without you. They'd compromised by adding a subtitle, founded by Noah Briggs in partnership with the Rourke Foundation. The center occupied a renovated building near St. Meridian with multiple training rooms, medical equipment, a lecture hall, and administrative offices. Over 2,000 people had completed their training program in the past year, and the number kept growing. They'd expanded to 6 other cities, with plans for national coverage within 5 years. The celebration drew hundreds of people, volunteers they'd trained, hospital administrators, business leaders, media representatives, and everyone who'd helped build this dream into reality. Marcus manned the entrance in his security guard uniform, greeting people with his infectious grin. Mrs. Chen arrived with a delegation of her friends, all of them dressed in their finest and proudly announcing they were Sophie's extended family. Robert Chen worked the room like the attorney he was, already lining up partnerships and funding for the next phase of expansion. And Sophie wore a new purple dress and light-up sneakers that she'd insisted on, and spent the evening being absolutely charming to everyone she met, telling them stories about her daddy, the hero, and Elena, the businesswoman who was basically a superhero but with a briefcase instead of a cape. Administrator Walsh approached Noah during a quiet moment. I wanted to apologize again for the way the hospital handled things last year. We were wrong, and we failed you. You made it right, Noah said simply. The hospital's partnership with the program, hosting trainings, providing medical staff, opening your facilities, that's what matters now. Still, I'm sorry. Walsh extended her hand. For what it's worth, you've done something extraordinary here. St. Meridian is honored to be part of it. Gregory Westbrook showed up too, though he kept his distance and left early. Noah didn't care. He'd learned that some people would never understand what really mattered, and that was their loss, not his. As the evening wore on, Elena pulled Noah aside to a quiet corner of the center's lobby. Through the windows, they could see the celebration continuing, people laughing and talking, Sophie demonstrating her light-up shoes to a very serious board member, Marcus telling what was probably one of his 3 jokes based on the crowd's groans. Look at what we built, Elena said softly, her hand finding Noah's. A year ago, I was bleeding out in a parking lot, and now we're here. Noah squeezed her hand gently. They'd been together officially for 3 months, taking things slow for Sophie's sake, figuring out how to blend their lives without rushing. Sophie had adapted beautifully, declaring Elena practically family already, and asking regularly when they were going to make it official. I have something for you, Elena said, reaching into her jacket pocket. She pulled out a small frame and handed it to Noah. Inside was Sophie's original drawing. Daddy is my hero. Carefully preserved and professionally framed. But Elena had added something to it. At the bottom, in her elegant handwriting, he was right, you are. Noah's throat tightened. Elena, you saved my life, Noah. But more than that, you taught me how to live, how to build something that matters, how to be part of something bigger than myself. She gestured at the room around them. Every person we've trained, every life they might save, that's your legacy. Not the trauma, not the losses. This. Noah pulled her close, pressed a kiss to her forehead. Our legacy. I couldn't have done this alone. Good thing you didn't have to. The speeches started around 8 p.m. Administrator Walsh spoke about the hospital's commitment to community health. Robert Chen outlined the program's expansion plans. Marcus surprised everyone by getting choked up while talking about Noah's dedication. Then it was Noah's turn. He stood at the podium with Sophie holding his hand. She'd insisted on being up there with him, and looked out at all the faces watching expectantly. A year ago, Noah began, I was a night security guard who'd convinced himself that keeping his head down and staying invisible was the best way to protect himself and his daughter. I'd spent 4 years running from my past, from my training, from the possibility of failing someone again. He paused, found Elena in the crowd. She was standing next to Mrs. Chen, both of them watching him with pride and love so obvious it made his heart ache. Then Elena Rourke got shot, and everything changed. She needed help, and I couldn't walk away. And in those few minutes of trying to keep her alive, I remembered something I'd forgotten, that my skills matter, that my experience has value, that being broken doesn't mean being useless. Sophie squeezed his hand and Noah squeezed back. This center exists because Elena refused to accept that being saved was the end of the story. She pushed me to think bigger, to build something that would let others do what I did for her. And together, we created something neither of us could have built alone. Noah's eyes swept the room, landing on faces he recognized. Volunteers who'd taken their training and used it. People whose lives had been touched by the program. The slowly growing community of people who believed ordinary citizens could be extraordinary when it mattered most. If we teach just one person to act when someone is afraid and bleeding, Noah continued, that's enough. But we've taught thousands, and they'll teach others. And those ripples will spread until hopefully, someday, no one has to die because a bystander was too scared to help. The applause started before he finished, building until it filled the room. Sophie threw her arms around Noah's waist, and when he looked up, Elena was making her way toward the stage, her smile brilliant and her eyes shining. She took the microphone from Noah, waited for the applause to die down. "I just have one thing to add," she said. "This center exists because one man refused to walk away when someone needed help. Because Noah Briggs proved that the strongest heroes are often the ones who never ask to be seen at all." More applause. Sophie was tugging on Elena's sleeve now, whispering something urgently. Elena laughed and held the microphone down to Sophie's level. "I want everyone to know," Sophie announced in her 6-year-old voice that somehow carried to every corner of the room, "that my daddy is the best daddy in the whole world, and Elena is going to be part of our family forever, and they're going to get married, and we're going to get a dog and live happily ever after." The room erupted in laughter and cheers. Noah's face burned red. Elena looked delighted, and Sophie just beamed, absolutely certain she'd helped move their relationship forward through sheer force of announcement. After the speeches, as the celebration continued around them, Noah pulled Elena aside again. "So," he said, "getting married and getting a dog and living happily ever after? Your daughter has opinions." Elena was trying not to laugh. "Strong opinions that she apparently feels comfortable sharing with 200 people. She's not wrong, though, about the happily ever after part." Noah took both of Elena's hands in his. "Elena Rourke, I know it's only been 3 months. I know we're still figuring this out, but I've never been more certain about anything than I am about this, about us. So I'm going to ask you something, and you can say it's too soon, or that we should wait, or—" "Noah." Elena was smiling now, tears gathering in her eyes. "Are you seriously going to propose to me right now, at our program's opening celebration, with 200 people watching?" Noah glanced around. She was right. People were definitely watching, trying to look like they weren't, but failing miserably. Sophie had orchestrated this perfectly. "Maybe," Noah said. "Is that okay?" "It's perfect." Elena stepped closer. "And yes." "Yes?" "Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I'll be Sophie's stepmom. Yes to the dog, though we're going to argue about what kind. Yes to all of it." Noah kissed her then, in front of everyone, and the room erupted in applause again. Sophie launched herself at both of them, and they caught her in a 3-way hug that felt like the beginning of something wonderful. Mrs. Chen appeared with champagne somehow, already pouring glasses. Marcus was calling for another toast. Robert Chen was probably already drawing up legal documents. And somewhere in the crowd, Administrator Walsh was telling anyone who would listen about how St. Meridian Hospital had always supported the program from day one. But Noah didn't care about any of that. He just held Elena and Sophie close and felt, for the first time in 4 years, completely and utterly at peace. 6 months later, they got married in a small ceremony at the Briggs Center, surrounded by the people who mattered most. Sophie served as ring bearer and flower girl simultaneously, wearing light-up sneakers with her fancy dress and declaring it the best day ever except for maybe the day we get the dog. They got the dog 2 weeks after the wedding, a golden retriever puppy that Sophie named Hero because he's going to be as brave as Daddy. Elena sold her penthouse and they bought a house together. Nothing extravagant, just a comfortable place with a yard for Hero and enough bedrooms for Sophie to have her own space and a guest room for when Mrs. Chen visited, which was often. The program continued to grow. They trained 5,000 people in year 2, then 10,000 in year 3. Stories kept coming in, lives saved by ordinary people who'd learned to push past fear and act. Each story felt like validation, like proof that something good could come from tragedy. Noah still had nightmares sometimes, still had days when the weight of what he'd lost felt heavy. But Elena was there for those days, holding him through the dark moments, reminding him of how far he'd come. And Noah did the same for her when her demons surfaced, the mother who'd never approved, the years of loneliness, the fear that she wasn't enough. They healed each other, slowly and imperfectly, building a life that neither of them could have imagined a few years earlier. On the 2-year anniversary of the night Noah had saved Elena's life, they sat together on their back porch while Sophie played with Hero in the yard. The sun was setting over Seattle, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. "Do you ever think about that night?" Elena asked quietly. about what might have happened if you'd walked away. Sometimes, Noah admitted, but then I think about everything that came after. You, Sophie, this life we've built, and I realize that sometimes the worst moments lead to the best things. I used to think success meant conquering everything alone, Elena said. Being invincible, never needing anyone. But real success is this: finding people who see you completely and love you anyway, building something that matters with someone who makes you better. Noah pulled her close, pressed a kiss to her temple. We make a good team. The best team. Elena watched Sophie throw a ball for Hero, both of them tumbling over each other in the grass. Thank you, Noah, for saving my life, for loving me, for building this beautiful, complicated, perfect life with me. Thank you for not giving up on me, for being relentlessly stubborn and refusing to let me hide. It's been mentioned before, Elena said with a smile. Sophie ran up to the porch, Hero bounding behind her. Daddy! Elena! Watch Hero's new trick! They watched Sophie demonstrate how Hero could sit and shake and roll over, sort of, and cheered like it was the most impressive thing they'd ever seen. Because in that moment, it was. Everything was perfect in its imperfection, beautiful in its ordinary magic. Later that night, after Sophie was asleep and Hero was curled up at the foot of their bed, Noah and Elena lay together in the darkness, hands intertwined. Hey, Noah, Elena whispered. Yeah? I love you. I love you too. Noah squeezed her hand. Thank you for finding me in that hospital hallway, for seeing someone worth saving when I didn't. You saved yourself, Elena said softly. I just gave you a reason to try. Outside, the city hummed with life, millions of stories unfolding, tragedies and triumphs, endings and beginnings. And somewhere in that vast tapestry, two people who'd found each other in blood and fear had built something extraordinary from the wreckage of their pasts. Because sometimes a life saved becomes a life shared, and sometimes the strongest heroes are the ones who never asked to be seen at all. They just showed up when someone needed them, pushed past their fear, and refused to walk away. That's all it takes in the end. Just showing up, just being there, just being brave enough to try. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, that moment of courage changes everything.